Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Neon Genesis EvanGLORIO, our episode by episode discussion of Neon Genesis Evangelion. I'm your host, Gel, which I wanted to bring that up because I think I forgot to introduce us on the past 2 episodes or something.
Yes, I did notice that. I didn't mean to say anything because it is your show.
Let's get it out of the way now. Although if you've made it this far to the podcast, then you probably know who we are at this point. But yes, I'm Gel, and of course my co-hosts, we have Iro.
Yep, I'm still here.
Yep, and we have G.
We'll workshop that bit eventually, Iro. We'll meet for lunch. I'll come up with some catchphrases. Maybe Viva Democracy or something like that. We'll figure it out.
We're running out of podcasts to workshop for this particular series, as this is our third to last episode.
Yeah, we're getting there. In that case, let me use my other bit. Boy, the weather, huh? It sure is hot lately.
Yeah, after second impact, we've been stuck in summer. It really sucks.
Yeah. What do you think is what do you think is the standard temperature of LCL fluid? Is it room temperature? Do you think it's a little bit warmer?
It could be body temperature, going in one of those sensory deprivation tubes or whatever.
It's got to be at least. It can't be higher than body temperature, right? It's got to be.
I mean, you don't know, right? Maybe it's I don't have any real world things to point to as examples of this is the standard temperature you immerse a human being in when piloting a robot. But
what do you sous vide your steak at?
I'm not I'm not sure you should put your Ava pilots. You should sous vide your Ava pilots for more than a couple hours. I think.
Yeah. Well,
bad times ahead.
As we were saying, we're getting on the home stretch here with episodes.
I don't really approve of eating the S2 Oregon raw, so either. So.
Yes, we'll get to the S2 engine in a minute here.
I raw feed my Ava.
Anyway, yes, we're on the home stretch here. This set of episodes kind of felt like watching a slow-moving car crash.
Oh, yeah.
Plot-wise and perhaps production-wise, which I'm sure we'll get into. But
oh, yeah.
But yeah.
We didn't have money for this road, so it's just cobblestones. But everyone talks about how rustic and great it is.
No, this ain't even cobblestones, my friend. This series of episodes of Neon Genesis Evangelion is literally that gif from Tom and Jerry, where Tom is sitting on top of the train and pulling tracks out from behind him and putting them in front of him. That is literally what is happening here. Gainax has, look, again, Gainax, the masters of cutting corners. So, of course, these episodes still, have a great, sense of style and aesthetic to them. But this is also literally them, fucking rummaging through the footage of, the last 20 episodes and being like, shit, what can we throw in front of us to keep this train rolling just a little bit longer?
So that's probably a good point to move into episode 20 on. Mm-hmm. Episode 20 is Of the Shape of Hearts and Humans, or Weaving a Story 2, Oral Stage. This is what we were referring to as the recap episodes. This is the second one, but it's not really a recap episode per se. It's more of a let's recycle as much animation as possible to give you a couple of vital plot points before we move on to the next one.
In many ways, this is like the other recap episode, though, where the second half was just a bunch of reused animation. It's just Eva Unit 0 colored a different color. So,
right.
Yeah.
In that sense, this episode actually does have a lot of similarities to that one.
I feel like this episode does have more actual plot, because they're not really recapping anything in this one. It's pretty much all new stuff happening with old visuals for the most part.
That's a good way to put it.
But yeah, so there are things that happen though that are important. So we kind of kick things off with Sele being mad about, we left off with the Evangelion Unit 1 going berserk and eating the last angel, including the S2 the S2 engine, taking that into
Yes.
itself, which has. I forget at which point in these episodes they basically have to put Unit 1 on ice because
They're pretty much starting here.
yeah.
You know.
So once it takes the S2 engine, they don't want to put it out there anymore because it's now like too dangerous or whatever. But
yes, highly concerned about its unconventional mid-season power-up.
Yes, and as another result of, if we recall last time, Shinji hitting 400% synchronization with Unit 1, whatever that means, he has now been turned into soup. He's part of the LCL.
Yes, Shinji got gooped.
We also have everyone. We also have all the Bridge Bunnies moving into the backup office, which is identical to the main office.
Yes, thank goodness. It is literally identical, down to the very line work.
So, yes, nothing needs to be redrawn. But yes, in general... Go ahead, G. Sorry.
I was going to say, that tracks with NERV, right? Like, that's what NERV would do.
Why would you design it differently?
Right, like you would build the backup office to look exactly the same. That's a very NERV thing to do, I feel.
It's very practical.
You know, like in many ways, like, you know, if I were to like rank like all of the fictional mecha anime like organizations like that like run like mission control and maintenance for their mechs, NERV is obviously very close to the bottom of that list in terms of like moral ethics and like pilot well-being, but they might rank at the top in terms of like preparedness, in terms of diversity in solutions in their thinking.
I mean, let me talk to you about the King of Braves, Gao Gai Gar.
I mean, they put jets on the plug in case they fall, right? So they're
very prepared. Like, yes. I mean, I want to put out real quick, like, this is not like a. I mean, obviously, this is just a media thing. I doubt there's actually any bit of world building, but just to kind of shout out as I did, a long while ago. But it's just continued to look good, so there's been no reason to keep bringing it up. But just the god tier UI design in Evangelion. But related to that, like just something tickled me pink about that in universe. Like if you're familiar with like how UI UX are designed, like that means like some programmer had to actually like code a message in the NERV like mainframe to say the message pilot vanished, which means somebody had to like plan far enough ahead to be like,
at some point this is a possibility.
Like at some point this is a possibility, so we need to make sure the UI is capable of displaying that message.
I mean, the Magi system is brains, so
yes. I suppose if the Magi is doing everything,
the three aspects of Ritsuko's mother, the scientist, the woman, and the graphic designer.
That's a very important aspect. Yes. But yeah, things are in general not going well in the aftermath here. Shinji has been merged with the LCL. The girls are not too great either. Ray's obviously been in the hospital from
still alive though.
Still alive, but in the hospital after Unit 0 got destroyed. And
I would like to point out that Shinji's plug suit is floating around inside the entry plug, even though he got into the robot in his school uniform.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
that's ruined the entire show now. Shut it all down.
Now, allow me, Your Honor, to bring up the as you see here in my documents that I am presenting, obviously, the final episode of Gunbuster 2, aka Die Buster, in which Lulk finds a spare uniform in the hidden cockpit of Dick Sniff. That is a reference to Noriko's original uniform from Gunbuster. Clearly, Evangelion pods probably just keep a spare uniform in there. That's all.
Yeah, sure. That's why he had to put on Asuka's uniform.
Sure.
All right.
I appreciate the effort on that one, G. I appreciate the effort, but yeah, Ray's still in the hospital. Asuka's not
pissed,
doing well either. Yes, she's pissed because she got absolutely destroyed, and Shinji had to save the day again.
I mean, this has kind of been the story of Asuka ever since, like, I don't know, almost ever since her introduction, right? Like
Yes.
Asuka got a couple of like wins early on, but otherwise it's all been downhill from here, right?
Right. She is unhappy that Shinji outplayed her against Ribbon Arms.
Yeah.
And doesn't care that Rei's alive, even though Misato calls to tell her. And just it's not a good time.
Yeah. But we'll get plenty more of Asuka later, but in general, things have not been going great, and we kind of cut into Shinji's mind again, since he's right now a metaphysical being.
Right? They say that the LCL within the entry plug has become like primordial soup.
Yes. He is existing in the entry plug in the LCL in quantum form, apparently.
All of the ingredients of a human body are still contained within, so with some alchemy, you can put them back together.
Whatever, man.
We get a glimpse into Shinji's mind again, and get kind of the same like bits with him, working out his insecurities and whatnot. I did think it was interesting in this particular bit, the way it was cut, and some of the imagery was very similar to Rei's in the last recap episode when she was floating in the LCL,
doing her monologue.
Yeah, so some of the way they did the cuts and stuff was very similar, I noticed. So I don't know if they were intentionally drawing the parallel there, because now Shinji is in the LCL, but yeah.
I mean, I think we see over the course of these episodes all three pilots, when they are put in the LCL and then subject to some kind of external psychological probing.
Does not go well, but yeah.
Yeah.
So, of course, this is all a convenient way to get away with some recycled animation.
Yeah.
Including even some of the new images, looping them over and over and over again. But so Shinji is stuck in the LCL for like a month. A full month goes by with conveniently no angel attacks.
I have a screenshot here that says LCL temperature holding steady at 36 degrees centigrade.
That's pretty.
So there you go.
Yeah. All right. Sure. So so summer tip: do not take a dip in the LCL. No. I guess.
Yeah. Like a whole month goes by, and I guess it takes that long for Ritsuko to figure out how to theoretically get Shinji out of there. And so they attempt.
Yeah, and they note that the backbone of this plan was conceived many years ago when someone else got sucked into the Eva when Ritsuko's mother worked a nerve.
Yes.
But the attempt to salvage the situation failed then.
Yes, that did not work the first time, but they're going to try again. So the salvage operation begins. A lot of it is just techno babble stuff, but
I mean, there's a lot of this episode is babble, period, if you ask me.
Yeah, there's a lot of techno babble and killing time and whatnot, and so they do eventually. Well, they're trying to get Shinji out, and they kind of ask, does he want to come out? And I think they imply he finally comes out after Misato. He hears Misato or whatever, but and there's no actual visual of him coming out. Where he's just not there, and then next shot, his naked body is laying face down.
Just the core just spit him out.
Yup.
So yeah, again, we're kind of breezing through this because there's really not a lot that actually happens. They're very obviously stalling for time on a lot of this, but
yeah, I mean, this is kind of one of those episodes that, I mean, maybe this is something worth talking about all of these episodes, but I feel like because we're talking about it now, maybe this is the time to bring it up. But like, it's definitely episodes like these where, like, again, not to take like an uncharitable view of like many people's takes on this show as a whole, but like it's the episodes like these that make me wonder what is the push and pull between what aspects of Evangelion at this stage of its narrative are like the intentionality of Anno, the intentionality of Gynax, and how much of this was like, the desperate moves of somebody trying to save money. That is not to imply that these scenes are like insincere, or that these scenes were just ginned up
Yeah,
on a whim, but more like how many of these scenes exist because like, I guess it's a thing, right? Of like, again, like, not to like, not well, some of these strawmen are starting to become real based on some articles I've read lately. But like, you always hear the articles about like, oh, like Evangelion makes this like daring tonal shift, how 2/3 of the way through, and what a genius Anno is. And it's like, I don't deny that like some of this stuff is definitely intentional, but like how much of it is like what Anno originally intended for Evangelion versus like what they had to do because we ran out of money.
yeah, I know. So we raised that question in the last episode, and I was thinking about that a lot watching this week. I don't think anybody sticks up for this episode because it's pretty obvious that this was like a filler thing. But we are going to get a lot more of the either, maybe not so much the recycling, but a lot of uncomfortably long still shots.
Yes, and I guess that's what I mean, right? Is that like,
yeah,
would those still shots still exist in the version where Anno had all the money in the world? Would those, or would those shots exist, but would they not have lasted as long?
Yeah.
Right. Like Iro mentioned. Well, maybe we'll talk about this later, but like Iro told me that apparently in like the Rebuild movies, a scene that is like uncomfortably long in the TV series is a little bit shorter in the movie version, and so it's like, well, was the original version made that long because that was Anno's intention, or was that because like, we got to stretch out, like we got to like we got to cut corners wherever we can.
I think it's, obviously we'll never be able to say for sure.
Of course.
This episode, like I said, I think nobody really cares about this episode that much, but in general, I'm inclined, as I was thinking about that rewatching these, I'm inclined to believe that the scenes would have still been there. They probably just would have been more animated, and maybe some of them wouldn't be, because I was thinking back to was it episode 4 where they have the 90-second standing at the train station bit. I think that was 100% intentional. They still had money back then.
But that was also an episode that they made real fast to plug in the slot because they felt they needed it, right?
Right, like that episode was not originally.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I still think they would have done it though. But
I guess I'm not denying that, right? I guess like, in the same way that like, I don't know, in the same way that like, for example, the studio that seems to have inherited the Gynax knack for cutting corners, like in the way that Trigger often does its comical bits by cutting corners, I don't deny that those are likely intentional, but also like, just
I don't think they.
How much are we ascribing? I guess how much are we ascribing to like the genius of the director's intentions and the genius of the show versus like people trying to reach for things that were maybe just done out of a matter of like desperate necessity. And I'm not going to say I have the answer.
Yeah, that question I don't want to answer now. But
now, hang on, you're telling me Eva fans are reaching?
Yeah, that question. Well, I think we can revisit it again at the end of this. I think we'll be revisiting that a couple times throughout the last couple episodes here. But
probably so.
Yes. Yeah, that is again something to keep in mind as we keep moving along here. But one last thing. Final part in episode 20, speaking of long still frames. Misato and Kaji finally get it on after
having spent a month worrying about Shinji. The first thing she does after making sure he's okay is to go have sex with her boyfriend.
Yes.
Look, every human beings got to let off steam somehow, and like
she longed for the touch of another and thus invited to kisses or
whatever the title.
However that went.
So, according to the Platinum notes, they said this was actually pretty controversial, I guess, at the time, because
I mean it was like 1995.
They don't show anything, but there's a lot of sound.
Well, there's a lot of telling.
There's a lot of telling, let's say, yes.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of those perfect examples of how it is easier to bring in the voice actors into the booth on short notice than it is to animate a scene.
And the entire thing is entirely just one still shot of like the the glass of
bedside or whatever.
glass of booze
Yes.
and cigarettes on the bedside or whatever. But they kind of get into a little bit of Misato trying to get more information out of Kaji. As she's trying to get to the bottom of, all the.
I mean, I think in many ways, like Misato's relationship with Kaji is, it's a capital I interesting one. Maybe not what I'd call a healthy relationship, or even a relationship I think is a good one to have with a person like Kaji. But like, it is that interesting mix of like, she is obviously using him, but she's obviously using him in a two-pronged way, right? Like, or like, I think she does genuinely like use him as kind of an emotional crutch, but also she is using him to like try to uncover more information.
Right, it can be both things, but yeah, I mean, in a world where not a lot of options for emotional crutches in Misato's world, so I mean,
no, I mean,
I'm pretty sure Second Impact killed all of the psychologists.
Yes, apparently NERV does not have. Yeah, now that you brought that up, actually, I was gonna say like fucking even like goddamn Star Trek, like remember to have like a psychological health expert on board.
I mean,
like
if you were a Misato, would you trust the NERV staff psychologist?
No, not a chance. Of course not. But like, I mean, Christ, who would that be out of the staff you have there?
Ritsuko.
It ain't Gendo. It's not Fuyutsuki. Ritsuko? No. As we find out, Ritsuko is equally fucked up in the head. What we're gonna like Maya? Like,
yeah,
air guitar guy. What's his name? Alba.
Like I said,
is that Alba?
Have they ever even said that guy's name in the show? Like,
I don't remember his name ever coming up.
I want that though. I want that dude to be like fucking air guitaring while like Misato's lying on one of those like psychology like couches, and he's like air guitaring, being like, "All right, man, tell me about your childhood" or something.
You're right. Maybe he would be a better support option than Kaji, but other than that, not a deep bench on the people you can open up to front in Evangelion.
But at the same time, it's also just, oh my god, every fucking time Kaji does his fucking faux, like, deep adult shtick, I'm just like, please. Like, oh, please. Like, you're not fooling anybody.
Oh, Kaji. Well.
But the scene does end with him placing a pill on the, like, the table.
Yeah, like a capsule.
Yeah. And at first, I was like, oh, is that like a birth control pill or something? But, well, it's a little bit of foreshadowing for what happens later, I guess.
Yeah, we'll come back to the capsule later, but yeah, that kind of wraps up the episode 20. They kind of got that one out of the way, and moves us into episode 21, where quite a bit happens.
Yeah, we're moving into the director's cut episodes.
Yes.
Which my understanding are the extended versions from Death and Rebirth.
Yes.
The compilation movie.
Yes. So, if anybody's not aware, there was a compilation movie which also had the first half of End of Evangelion. Is that how it worked?
Yes. Death is these extended episodes, and Rebirth was
right
the first half of End of Evangelion.
Yeah, so that was like the initial theatrical release, and then the End of Evangelion was that part, and then the actual ending altogether.
Right.
So in 2019, there is zero reason to watch Death and Rebirth at this stage, because if you just watch the director's cut versions, I'm actually not sure what made it on Netflix. I'm assuming it was the director's cut because that was the home release. But
Death and Rebirth is also on Netflix, though.
Right, that is available separately, but there's literally no reason to watch it. But
yeah, the best part of Death and Rebirth is in the middle, where there's this like 5-minute intermission where just the soundtrack plays and there's a counter ticking down.
Huh. That's a bold creative choice to pull in a home release of.
I think it aired in theaters at some point.
Or it did air in theaters. You know what? Hey, you know what? I'll say this: movies are getting hell long these days. I wouldn't mind if they brought back intermissions
for like a 90-minute movie, though.
Well, not for a 90-minute
movie. Yeah, the Marvel shit's like 3 hours long, man.
Endgame is like 3 hours or some shit.
Endgame could have used it.
I can't hold it in that long, like, shit.
Yeah. So episode 21 is the Birth of NERV, or he was aware that he was still a child. Another fantastic episode title. But as Ira mentioned, these are the director's cut episodes, which probably most prominently we see some cold opens on these episodes, which are one of the big additions. Yeah. This one, I don't really know if it gives us a whole lot, other than it kind of gives us some glimpses of, I guess, was it when Second Impact was happening or something?
Yeah,
that's the implication.
Security footage
right?
from Second Impact.
Yeah, so it's like
we find out that S2 means super solenoid because that clears things up.
I mean, okay, yes. In the grand scheme of things, this scene at the beginning doesn't actually explain that much, but it kind of just. I feel like it's one of those like tone setting, like
it's a mood
scenes to kind of set the mood for like what, because this whole like episode is basically like, you know, as they say, the birth of NERV, the history of like the organization that eventually becomes NERV, and so kind of having this scene kind of set the vibe of like, yo, second Impact like really fucked a lot of shit.
Yeah, up. And the bulk of the episode is flashback, starting from that point to present day. With, you know, we have a couple of present day things sprinkled in there, but you know the main content of the meat of the episode is the past.
But first things first is Fuyutsuki gets kidnapped.
Right, and like Misato gets taken in to put in Salter as well because Kaji is a suspect.
Yes, because if somebody gets kidnapped at NERV, Kaji is probably your number one.
Probably Kaji's
suspect. So Fuyutsuki gets abducted and taken to go see Seilei.
By the big blocks now.
Yeah, sound only, baby.
We've switched over to the sound only blocks that we typically associate with Seilei and not their actual.
Man, this is again like one of those things that's like, on one hand it is a striking visual design, but also like just fucking because the thing I obsess with over in Evangelion is like, you know, the mechanical physicality of the show. So part of me is just fucking tickled pink at the idea of like we can't use those holograms anymore. We can't show our faces. Like we're gonna hire a contractor to build these 7 fucking flat oblongs that just project our voices, and you know, it makes me want to imagine. Sorry, what era?
In a post Second Impact world, probably pretty good gig for graphic designer to work with Secret Shadow organization.
Yes. I mean, I was more thinking of
take the work you can get.
Maybe Jill back me up here, but I kind of always I was kind of imagining, trying to imagine like some kind of like New York union contractor dude being like, all right, so let me get this straight. You want me to build a concentric circle of 7 flat oblongs?
Are they actually physically there though, or are those just the replacement holograms?
I'm actually not sure.
I think they're the replacement holograms.
Oh, that's too bad. I wish they actually built those.
See, call up Stone Carver to carve sound only into piece of slate.
Like what if and let me get this straight. So I'm gonna need you ask for custom engraving work here. It's gonna say sound only on the oblongs. Like, I know a guy now. Let me tell you, like, I could get you a good deal. We could do 14 oblongs for cheaper than 7 because I got to order in a batch anyway.
Yeah. They come in batches of 15.
Yeah, this stone is $15 a square foot, but if you get this stone, it'll last a lot longer. It's $20 a square foot, but yeah.
That's too bad. They're just holograms. I thought they were physical.
Yeah.
That's a shame.
Anyway, so they're interrogating Fuyutsuki because, you know, they're not happy with Gendo, and they're I guess, is this the part where they're contemplating using him to replace Gendo or something? Is that what's going on at this point?
When are they ever happy with Gendo?
Yeah.
When is anybody ever happy with Gendo?
I mean, you can't blame them to a certain extent, but it's not like they have the best of intentions either, so I don't know.
No, I mean, look, I still don't really know what Seelei's entire deal is yet, like, or you know, I don't know the full picture of it, but let me just say, anybody who drops the line, and I quote, "We have no intention of creating a new god," is not somebody to be trusted. because anybody who's that is such a highly specific denial. Like
Yeah.
that's like
Wait,
that's
so
like
what
that's
were
like
you
if I
trying to do?
right? Like that's like if I catch a roommate like opening up the fridge and he's like, "I wasn't drinking your booze." It's like, why would you say that? I didn't say anything.
I just
yet.
walked
It's
in the
like,
room, right? Yeah.
like we have like yeah. If I saw my roommate opening the fridge, he said, "I have no intention of creating a new god." I'd be like,
What are you doing with my ice cubes?
"What are you doing with my leftovers?"
Yeah. So anyway, while this is happening, this kind of causes Futsuki to think back to all the way.
Takes me back to my college teacher days.
Yeah, all the way back to his to 1999.
The idyllic
All right.
1999.
1999 bizarre summer.
Yep. And this is, I guess, technically pre Second Impact at this point, right? Because what?
Yes.
And then we get our first opportunity. Like this is the first time they really show Shinji's mom, right?
Yes.
Yup.
We meet Yui Ikari
Yes.
for the
Who?
first
Yes,
time.
who was one of his students? Is that how that works?
I believe so. Yeah.
Right. She's like in the same like field as him, and so
Right, she's like an up and
they're
coming
like,
Yeah, they
yeah,
student.
yeah, they're like,
so
she's like an up and coming genius in the field of I don't even know what
bioengineering.
field they were talking about, to be honest. Yeah, something like that.
Bioengineering.
Yeah. And so Futsuki kind of takes a liking to Yui, who's one of his students, and we also, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we meet a young Gendo Rokubungi, as his name currently is
Yes.
at this point in time.
Yeah, I didn't actually know this detail, but that's interesting.
He's a fucking hooligan.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, as Fuyutsuki says, young Gendo looks pretty coarse.
Yeah. Well, they meet by him bailing him out of jail or something, right? Or
yeah,
after getting into a fist fight or something. So
something like that. Which, to be fair, you know what? Like father, like son, for better or worse. Like if Gendo got to a fist fight, he probably deserved it.
I would believe that. Yeah, I don't know if they gave us. I don't remember if they gave us any details as to what happened, but
Like among the worst ways to meet someone is you're called by the cops out of nowhere saying this person you've never met is asking you to pick them up and post bail.
yes. So
Like, excuse me?
not a great way to not a great first impression for sure.
I mean, young Gendo is clearly a man that has no fucks to give. I mean, even at such a young age, you know, just
Yeah.
did they even address what does Gendo do? Like, is he also a student in bioengineering or anything?
I don't know.
Like, the implication seems to like the implication of this flashback is that like Gendo just literally marries into Sela, or like, you know, what becomes it, like just by happenstance, but doesn't actually have any like real expertise to bring to the table. Like he's not a scientist. He's not a
They don't. I don't think they ever really specify like what he does, right? Like
right. He's not like rich or anything. It's like he just like what. Is it just like is it just like every, you know, just like, you know, the UN or whatever, I guess it's still the UN at this point, is like, you know, doing their like investigations and shit, and it's just like Yui, you're like the star like scientist, we want you to lead this operation, and she's like, I'll do it, but only on one condition. my hubby Gendo has to come with me. And everybody's just like
husband with me,
side eyeing, and they're like
I don't know. Yeah, I mean
that guy.
I mean, people who are ambitious and have no morals, no moral direction, often find themselves in positions of power. So whether regardless of their level of talent or ability, so, you know, maybe he just conned his way up the ranks or whatever, but
just faked it until he made it.
But yeah, anyway, so this kind of kicks off a series of almost like a year by year recap of Futsuki's memories for counting down from that time to through Second Impact and then up to now. When I like some of them they just skip. He's like, nah, nothing good happened there. That was so bad. It's not even worth talking about.
Right, they like a year immediately after Second Impact really sucked.
Yes, the year of hell.
Yeah, and we catch up a couple years later with Gendo hunting him down as he's working as an unlicensed doctor in
some like crazy shanty town.
Yeah, like humanity is clearly not in a great place immediately post Second Impact.
I think is this here where they mentioned that it's just permanent summer on Earth now?
Yeah,
at this point.
Yes,
although the cicadas have been there all so long.
Yeah. So we actually, I never really thought about it, but like you always think about Evangelion feeling like it's in summertime with the cicadas and everything, and when you think about it, it's like a lot of like several months have passed. Like I don't know exactly how much time has passed throughout we know at least the 1 month passed from last episode, right? So like,
I mean, I feel like the implication is that at least enough time has passed that like
we should be in our,
at least by this episode in the show, I think viewers would begin to realize, wait a minute, it's been summer for a while.
We should be switching to our fall uniforms now, right?
Right, exactly.
I never thought about that until watching this again. I was like, oh, it didn't never even occur to me. But yeah, so Gendo hunts down Futsuki and convinces him to go on a trip to Antarctica with him, where they first see the site of Second Impact, and Futsuki kind of learns the truth that it was, not a meteor, because I guess everyone was still buying that story, and kind of gets sucked into at this point. NERV is called Gahern. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so he kind of gets sucked into working with Gendo and Yui on their projects.
Right. We see young Misato in a fucking cell like an animal.
Yes.
Yeah. Misato, like just a catatonic Misato.
Yes. She has not spoken. I think they said it's been like 2 years at this point since Second Impact. As the last survivor, she has not spoken or communicated with anybody at this point. So they're just kind of
which makes her bounce back in this flashback like even weirder for me. Like,
well, by the time, I mean, there's a couple more years that happen between this and
right. But like, what I mean is like we see Misato in a flashback in this flashback, right? Like this is like we see Misato both like immediately after Second Impact, and then we see a flashback Misato like a few years after that when she's like in college, and like.
Yeah, I
she seems to have entirely bounced back with like no seeming like trauma.
I mean,
whatsoever.
by the time she was in college, that would have been like what, like 10 years after, or 8 or 9 years or something after.
Guess,
so
yeah.
I mean 8 years before the show, right? So 3 or 4 years after where she's catatonic.
Oh yeah, so that's not even that many years. Like,
I mean, it's possible. I mean.
I'm sure. I'm sure. I just.
Yeah, but anyway, so again, this whole episode is just giving us more details of how NERV or Gahern was back then. We did meet. We did officially meet Ritsuko's mother. I always just call her Dr. Akagi, but Naoko Akagi. And
we see young Ritsuko as well.
Yeah.
Pre-dyed hair.
Yeah, and we are also introduced to what will become the Geo Front. Like.
Yes. Right.
Basically
we found this big-ass cave.
Yeah. Basically, Futsuki uncovers the truth of Second Impact and threatens to go public with it, and then Gendo's like, fuck it, whatever, let me just show you what's actually going on here. And that is how he gets dragged into this...
You mentioned Geofront was not man-made. They found it.
Yeah.
Right. It is identical to the cave under Antarctica where they found Adam and the Lance of Longinus.
Yes.
Apparently Anno believes in Hollow Earth theory. So.
Well, it's not quite that big, but yeah, he he sees the Geofront and what's going on. That's when, and then once they get into central dogma. That's when they meet Dr. Kagi.
Can't believe the Untersee is in Neon Genesis Evangelion.
And we are introduced to Unit 0.
Yes,
Right.
we see
or what is the beginning
of
of Unit 0.
it.
Which is like what, a spy in its head and like
kind of it,
Right.
yeah. At that point,
yeah.
So they're in the process of building the Evangelions. They're also, or the first Evangelion. They're also in the process of finishing the Magi computers. As Ira mentioned, we get a glimpse of teenage Ritsuko in here, and eventually we see Misato and Ritsuko, the college years version, as they're they manage to become
Hanging
friends
out.
somehow, probably because they're the only people their age at that point. But
that are still alive.
yeah, and it's interesting. We see in the present day their relationship where they're still kind of friends, but that's a lot more tense.
Cold.
That relationship has like undeniably
Yes.
changed. Like it's a thing I didn't really notice until this set of episodes. But
Yeah,
like, it doesn't actually feel like Misato and Ritsuko are that close.
Yeah, because
like they are work friends, you know. Like they are close enough friends that Ritsuko occasionally deigns to visit Misato's nightmare apartment to eat curry. But like, you know, and they'll go out drinking. But it feels like the kind of friendship that exists because of just like momentum. Right. Like, we don't know anybody else. Like, you know, we used to be great friends. So like, you know, who else am I going to invite drinking?
Right.
You know?
But so this adds an interesting context to that, because they were actually legitimately friends when at this stage.
Yeah, they're find it sound like Ritsuko's writing letters to her mother or something.
Yeah.
Right.
During this sequence. We also see Ritsuko smoking for like, I think, the only time on screen. Every other time it's just a shot of an ashtray with 100 cigarettes in it.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up, because I did not catch that detail.
I never thought about that. You never actually see.
And again, how much of that is like a slick stylistic choice, and how much of that is like we don't feel like animating a smoking scene.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, as we've been saying the whole time, even with no money, like their visual storytelling is top notch.
Yeah, it is top notch. It always has.
They're making do, right?
Yes, we find we also meet one little Shinji.
Oh yeah, I put that in the notes, but we do see baby Shinji.
Yes, we see that it is bring your kid to work day, because we got little Shinji just kind of running around, that little tyke
in his little stroller, and
in this fucking clandestine facility. Gendo seems totally cool with it, because, you know, like this is still this is like this is when Yui was still around, so like Fuyutsuki's like, should we have that kid running around? And Gendo's basically just, if Yui's fine with it, whatever.
Yui brought him, like, she wants to show him the cool experiment.
Probably not a great day to bring your kid to work, but
again, I want to bring up once again. Maybe we'll also get to this with the Asuka flashback episode. So I get this is a very common trope in fiction, right? Like not just in anime, but also in Western fiction, right? Of course, you have like Spider-Man's nemesis, the Lizard, and many such types as that. But NERV seems to have an awful policy of letting its head scientists partake in their primary experiments, like as the main test subjects, which this is not how testing works in the real world. Like when the U.S. Oops,
sorry, that was me.
When the U.S. military, for example, develops like a new prototype jet, the head of the Air Force does not pilot the jet.
Or the engineer
right?
that designed it does not get in the jet. Yes.
Yeah. Right, like the guy who built the jet does not get in the jet. Like that's not how it works. Like when they experiment with like cloning, right? They clone sheep. They don't clone the head scientist. Like
But what if they
did they
did?
say something where
I mean, oh yeah, man, what if they did? How much cooler would science be? But like I'm just saying, like, if you had to, like, if Yui really needed to experiment with, like, this, like, mind melt, like, they don't even really get into the details of what the experiment is. Like, it's just implied to be something related to the Ava units.
You can put 2 and 2 together by this point, I would
Yeah,
say.
I think definitely
Like-
by the end of 23, but yeah.
Yeah, but, like, just, like, you couldn't, other what mecha anime tropes were too good for you? Like you couldn't find some hotshot like fighter pilot to do the test for you, like every other proper mecha anime. Like fucking Dr. Saotome does not pilot Mazinger Z. Like he gets his grandson to do that for him.
Test it on your grandson. So
I mean, Temrei puts his own son in the Gundam.
That is true. But see, that's my point. Temrei is a good scientist. Temrei himself would not pilot the Gundam because that's a health risk.
So, didn't they say at some point like this was Yui's decision or something? I mean, not that makes it better per se.
But... No. Yes, I'm not attacking this. I'm like, oh, this is bad writing. They explain it. I'm saying
it's still a bad idea.
Yui might not actually be that smart of a scientist if she insists on testing things on herself.
Yeah. So, as all experiments do in Evangelion, this one goes wrong.
Horribly
does
wrong.
not go well, and these are kind of Yui's last time we ever see Yui at this stage.
Mm-hmm. One can infer this was the incident mentioned in the previous episode where someone was sucked into the Ava.
So, and as we know, that did not work, of course. So she's officially declared dead at this point. And this is where Gendo kind of takes a turn. They say he changes after this.
Gendo becomes Gendo.
Mm-hmm.
And he shifts his focus over to the human instrumentality project. And that is how we get the Gendo Ikari that we know today.
But for all
go ahead, G.
Go ahead, Jill.
Oh, I was just gonna say.
No. You.
I was just gonna say we didn't mention why does Gendo take her surname? Is there? Is that like a common thing that like a cultural thing that I'm not aware of, or
I have read it is culturally appropriate if her family is of higher standing.
That's what
for him to take her surname.
I figured, but I didn't do any research on it. I just thought that was interesting.
My understanding is it's also meant to signify that he did actually love her and was not just using her, but that's getting into conjecture.
Well, regardless of like what Gendo's actual aims are,
right?
Like, it's hard to really call him husband of the year when he is already picking up side ass like no less than a couple of weeks after his wife's disappearance.
Naoko Akagi start get a scene where she's like, "This is what I wanted to happen, so I could mac on Gendo Ikari."
Yui's gone out of the picture, right? And we kind of get this message to us by Ritsuko. She's joining Gahern, and she shows up just in time to see her mom making out with Gendo.
Which certainly does not have any ill effects on her psychology. Whatsoever.
Can kind of infer that she had a thing for Gendo.
Yeah. We also are introduced to Rei.
Yes. All kinds of weird, fun stuff happens in this segment.
Yes. Little Rei is here. Yes. I think we saw. I forget which episode in particular, but there's some sort of flashback where Gendo and Yui are talking about what to name their child.
I think that was actually the last episode.
I think you're right. When Shinji's inside the robot, where she says, "If it's a boy, we'll name him Shinji. If it's a girl, we'll name her Rei."
And so
Gendo shows up with Rei.
Rei Ayanami just showing up.
Yeah, it's daughter of my friend or relative or something. I don't know. None of you are buying.
Yeah,
None of you are buying
right?
Just like my late wife.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, I mean, look, it's a little hard to hide the blue hair and the red eyes. Like, anime is anime, but I feel like they still make it a point that, like, Rei specifically has, like, some very unnatural physical characteristics. Right. And it's like, Gendo, I don't think you got any blue-haired, red-eyed family friends.
Yeah. So, Baby Ray's walking around, and
yeah, Baby Ray's also got a fucking.
I guess they let her walk around unsupervised in this top secret facility because we see a bit where Dr. Akagi's checking out the Magi computer, and Baby Ray pops up, and man, this is a scene.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Akagi's trying to be nice to her at first, like, "Oh, are you lost or whatever?"
She tries very hard to be.
She tries hard to be the nice.
She tries not to strangle her, but she just can't help herself.
Jesus.
Look, maybe if Rei did not have make so much fucking back talk to her, her elders.
I hate laughing about this, but it's so...
Maybe she'd still have a functioning windpipe now.
So it's not just that, but she happens
resemblance
to look
with
very
Yui.
much like Yui, as she points out, and she says, "Hey, you old hag! That's what Gendo says. You're an old hag, and he doesn't need you anymore." And
right, like she just like busts out like this weirdly like. This is a like snarkier, meaner Rei than the Rei we have ever seen in the show proper, which, I mean, maybe for reasons, but like, is there like, was this part of like the conditioning of like, let's just get it out here, the Rei clones? Like, is it like, like, was like the first run was like, oh, we accidentally gave it a little bit too much personality? Because like, I can't ever imagine the Rei that we know in the show be like, hey, by the way, my dad fucking hates you. He's just using you. Like, you're fucking shit.
I think they were going for...
She doesn't know, like...
Little kids being brutally honest and not knowing better.
Sure.
Because, like, if I could see that, maybe not quite that brutal and on the nose, but I could see a little kid saying something like that if, like, that's their only frame of reference. So, like, oh, that's Dr. Akagi. The only thing I know about this person is this thing that Gendo said. And that's what they're going to blurt out because they're a little kid. As to why she was wandering around headquarters, Central Dogma by herself or whatever in the middle of the night, it looks like, then I don't know. But
I mean, look, for better or worse, let's be real, right? What's the title? Well, let's go back to what the freaking title of this episode is. He was aware that he was still a child. Let's be real. Gendo never grew up. Gendo is definitely one of those dads who let Yui do all the, like, child raising, right?
Yes.
Like, whatever, my wife will take care of it. She knows how to raise a kid. That's not my job, because like fucking, as we can clearly see here, like with just Gendo and Rei, Gendo is completely incapable of adequately raising a child.
He didn't do much better with Shinji either.
Not
so
at all.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
strangles the hell out of Rei and then jumps from the top of the office onto the computers.
Yep. But, I mean, at least based on those prior episodes, not before she had time to angrily scrawl "Damn you, Gendo" on the innards of the Maggie, so...
Yeah, and so they say, like, and the next day, Gehiren became NERV, except for Dr. Akagi.
Whoops.
Yeah, they showed the...
chalk outline.
Oh God, they showed the chalk outline on the computers and everything, yeah.
And so there's the birth of NERV.
Yep. So I think we got that backstory. We got the backstory. We kind of been filled in with pretty much everything we need to know at this point. And somewhere sprinkled in there, they showed. Does it happen now or shortly before or whatever? I think some of these were cut together. But when Kaji
this is at the very end,
Futsuki,
I think. Yeah,
that's at the very end.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is at the end. So
he pulls Futsuki out. Misato's let out of solitary, and Kaji is apparently shot in some warehouse somewhere.
Yes, I mean,
Yep.
My understanding is a director's cut did some shot shuffling because originally the cuts made it seem like Misato was the one who shot him.
Oh,
right.
Weird.
So they did not. they at the very least wanted to let us know that it was not Misato
Right.
that shot him.
Okay.
Yeah, because the way it was cut, like the scene before, is Misato getting her gun back, right?
Yeah.
Oh wow, yeah. I guess if you cut it like that, yes, I could see how you could come to that conclusion. You know, as somebody who's only ever watched the director's cut, I was like, I'm not sure how you come to that realization.
So I think that's why they had to adjust it. But he was. I mean, we can put two and two together.
Yeah. So I mean, is the implication here that like Kaji had like some kind of last minute moment of conscience and busted Fuyutsuki out and then was like taken out by his Sealing masters, or was that just
something
like
along those
tying
lines?
up loose ends?
Yeah, I think it was something along those lines, because he does also, as we'll see later, give Misato all the information he has.
And of course, Kaji being like the fucking, frankly, the piece of shit he is, like leaves Misato the most fucking sorry, I was too cool, Misato. Maybe one day I could have been less cool and more straightforward with you. Oh well, I'm dead now. It's like, oh please, it's like the most fucking selfish thing in the world for a man to do, to be like, oh, I'm gonna be emotionally available now that I know I'm not gonna survive. Like, fucking fuck off, dude.
And even then, he doesn't quite commit to it. But
right, he even says, "Oh, if I see you again, I'll promise to say the thing you always wanted to hear, but I'm not gonna tell you in this phone call."
It was definitely within character.
Oh, of course it's in character. And
I wonder if that plays better to a Japanese audience.
Wow, Kaji really loved her all along or something.
Yeah.
I mean, I could totally see a person coming to that conclusion.
Right.
And I'm sure that in universe, that's what they want us to think.
Mm-hmm.
I just decided to continue to believe that Kaji's a piece of fucking shit. And that, frankly, it's very hard for me to sympathize. I mean, I empathize with Misato in the next couple of episodes, but it's very hard for me to sympathize with her feelings.
I think Kaji's supposed to be a very gray figure. I don't think you're necessarily.
I mean, right.
You're not supposed to like him, but he has.
I mean, I think we've always.
He's not.
Sorry, go ahead.
He has some redeemable qualities,
right,
but
he manages to be like the least unscrupulous male adult character in the show.
Yeah, which is an extremely low bar, but it's I mean, yes, Kaji's the one who gives Shinji the speech to get back in the robot, right? Like Kaji has done these things here and there. I think it's just
I mean, he basically sacrifices himself here.
Yeah, it's just I guess for me, it's just Kaji as a character is just it's not even just it's not just oh, he sucks because he's his personality or whatever. It's just Kaji so much toes that Kaji's so clearly intended to be the morally gray character that he's a scoundrel but he gets results and he truly does care after all, but he shows so little of that care externally. It's just really hard for me to actually care about him as a
I'm definitely want to talk about ambivalence.
Oh man, we want to talk about ambivalence in this show. I have some thoughts, but we'll save that.
But so just as far as this scene goes, we were kind of mentioning it. I actually really liked how they did this because as soon as Misato gets her gun back, she knows Kaji's dead.
Yeah.
She's waiting for the confirmation, and she's very anxious about getting the confirmation, but she knows, right? She's sitting there waiting.
I mean, once she's been let go, the implication is the matter has been dealt with, and
right. That's what the NERV Secret Service guys tell her is you're and so I think the way they set it up, and then the message is, I mean, it's makes sense for Kaji. It doesn't make you like him more, but it just makes
it
sense
is in
for
character. It is in character, yeah.
We get we kind of get Shinji uncomfortably listening to this all and not really wanting to be there, and this is where we get he was aware he was still a child because he doesn't know what to do. What do you do in that situation? Yes. Misato is breaking down, sobbing, listening to the message, and there's just literally nothing he can do about it. So. I mean,
I'm still gonna say I think Shinji made the right choice. I feel like going in there for the comfort.
Right.
I don't think Shinji would have been the one capable of doing that.
Yeah. But, so So yeah, Kaji's gone, and we move along into the next episode, 22.
Yes.
So this is Staying Human or Don't Be.
Yes, we finally
You know,
get
I
our,
wanted to
Oh, go ahead, Jill.
I wanted to mention, before getting into this episode specifically, I was reading something about how they're originally going to make, when Sadamoto was doing the character designs, they were originally going to make the main character a girl kind of similar to Asuka. And then they decided she'd be too much like Gunbuster and some of their other shows.
Oh no, too much like Gunbuster.
So they decided to make the main character a boy. I just thought I started thinking, because I had heard that a long time ago and actually looked it up again. That was actually a quote from Sadamoto.
That's interesting.
And then he just drew Shinji by giving more boyish hair on Nadia.
Yes.
Yes. So I for some reason I thought of that in this episode, because this is a very Asuka centric episode.
Oh, yeah. This is
where we finally get the reason why Asuka is the way she is.
Yes, this probably makes me a bad person, but I liked this episode a lot. I think it provides some fascinating insight into Asuka as a character, and just kind of like the central tenets of like her ideology and personality, and like it's like I think the thing that, like, you know, you can never take away from Evangelion is like the strength of its character writing. But like I for some reason it all comes together really well for me with Asuka. I think because Asuka is, for better or worse, the most conventionally anime character in this show.
Yes.
And so, like, for someone to kind of just take like sometimes a scalpel and sometimes a hammer to that archetype, and just be like, oh, this is what makes it tick. Like,
yes. Well, what would it take to get that kind of character?
Right. What would drive a person to act like this? And
yeah.
And maybe a part of it, and maybe a not a tiny insignificant part of it, is also like, you know, like, y'all have heard my stance on Asuka. You know, I don't wish awful things upon her, but maybe it was a little gratifying to.
Oh well, yeah, that's a different story. But
you know?
Yeah, no, I remember this was one of my favorite episodes the first time I watched it. Just because this is where my opinion of Asuka flipped, basically. But
I wouldn't say it flipped for me, but
yeah, well, I was younger and more naive back then too.
Sure,
but
sure.
I do feel
one day she might still be your waifu. I get it.
Well, and we'll talk more about
that. If you could just understand her well enough, she would reciprocate your feelings.
Anyway, so yeah, we kick things off with the director's cut cold open again with Asuka and Kaji. This is probably shortly before we meet them, right?
They're on the boat. They're on the ship.
They're like on the boat where they're shipping Unit 2. And, you know, Asuka is like desperately trying to come on to Kaji, and she's clearly just a child. Like, she has no idea how this works.
Like,
and it's kind of sad and desperate.
Yes, I think that's the thing that works for me here is, like, I think you can constantly ask yourself the question when it comes to fan service, especially in Evangelion, like, when is the fan service being used to communicate a point, and when is the fan service just being, you know, fucking skeevy shit, right? Like, you know, the difference between, like, a scene like the one here where, like, Asuka is, like, pulling down her blouse and,
look at my chest that's non-existent.
Right, like, desperately shoving her chest.
I'm an adult!
Right, to, like, convince Kaji that, like, to treat her like an adult, to give her the validation that she believes comes with being an adult. But then contrast this with, like, you know, my boy Kensuke selling illicit photos of Asuka at school, right? Like,
right.
To other children, though.
Right, yes. But even... But
still, no, I understand.
The gaze in those episodes still intended to be, like, to the fans, like,
yeah.
If you were there, you'd buy those photos, wouldn't you? Like...
Or this is kind of, like, revolting, right? Like,
right. Like, that's the thing. Like, I think the thing is, like, in 22, I think all the fan service in 22 works because it is, like... I don't know, maybe this is just because we're older. Like, I don't know, if we were like 14, 15, 16, would we still be like, haha, that's hot? But, like, looking at this, it's like, yeah, it's like what you said, Jill. It's sad. It's like, it's pitiable, right? It's
Right.
like you under,
Yeah.
like you understand why Kaji like responds the way he does, because like he's like, you're a child, like you're a kid, like your attempts at like flirting are like
Right.
so clumsy. But like, at the same time, this is the show where like, again, like Kensuke and like Toji are scoping out like, Rei's thighs or whatever, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Or she'll-
Completely different.
they'll still have her lean down in front of Shinji and show her boobs.
right. It's like how much like I think it's a very difficult line of like using sexuality to communicate narrative, and then just using sexuality as like titillation, and
Right.
I don't know. I kind of wish Ava had done it more the former,
This way,
because I
right.
think it still does it often enough in the latter. That is how you end up with the version of Evangelion that is like its perception in modern otaku like fandom, which is like, who's best girl, Asuka or Rei, right?
Right.
Like I think those conversations are fueled by the fact that Ava still sometimes winks and nods at the viewer and is like, yeah, but you still like it, right? And
Right. That does not appear to be the case in these in
Right.
this particular situation, right?
And that's a shame, because I think it's done so well in this episode.
Right. But yeah, so we get a lot more flashbacks in this one too with Asuka's backstory. We kind of get do we ever actually see Asuka's mother? We do hear her.
We see her like silhouetted in a hospital bed playing with a doll.
Yes. I mean, I think the point of the flashback is to communicate that the people in the universe of Neon Genesis Evangelion are contractually obliged to not have happy childhoods.
Oh, of course, yes. So Asuka's mother, we kind of learned about her. She was another scientist that was working on Unit 2. And she did she tried like a similar experiment to Yui, right? Like that's.
Yes, I think that's the implication. Yeah.
But she doesn't disappear, but she like absolutely loses her mind.
Right.
She thinks the doll is Asuka and is like, "Whoa, that weird little girl's is back."
Yeah, she refuses to acknowledge Asuka as her daughter now.
Meanwhile, her father is like in the other room banging some doctor.
Wait, what?
Right.
Did I miss that? Did I?
They have like him talking to some other doctor or something, right? That's
sure. I need to go back and recheck that. I missed that part.
Point is, Asuka also does not have great parenting. Yes. And eventually, Asuka's mother ends up hanging herself. Right?
Yeah, and this kind of leads to like Asuka claiming that like I think she's talking to like her like foster mother, like a family member or something, and she's like, I don't need anybody. Like she's saying this when she's like 4 years old. Like I don't need anybody anymore. Like I can take care of myself. I won't ever need anyone ever again. Like and what she says specifically, or I think what she says specifically, and I think this is what ties into the core of Asuka's character, is like she says out loud, like, I will find my own validation in myself, right? Like I will be independent, and like the inherent tragedy of that statement is like it is so like blatantly obvious that like Asuka is not capable of finding validation in her own like sense of self and accomplishment, right? Like
right, that's kind of the whole kind of tragedy of her character is like she puts on that front and tries to convince herself that and it goes too far to the point where she's like, yeah, I'm the greatest and all that, but like you can't just do that.
Like, I mean, it's just because
you have to
very
you have to
insecurity.
Because it's running away from her actual real problems that she never deals with.
And as we all know, the slogan of this show is you can't run away.
Right. So yeah, we kind of get some glimpses into some early glimpses into the backstory for Asuka here. we kind of cut him in and out between some of the present day stuff going on too, because Asuka is not having a great time with life
her
these days.
rates are dropping.
Indeed.
Yeah, she's dropping so low to the point that they're saying make Rei and Unit 0 the top priority now, because Unit 1's still on ice and Asuka is barely able to sync with Unit 2 at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things where, like, obviously they are making the hard but like rational choice here. I also feel like, for better or worse, like, I mean, maybe Asuka cultivated this image herself, but I feel like maybe another issue is that Asuka also has always kind of gotten the short end of the stick in terms of like how she has been deployed. Like, after this episode, I started to think about like every time Asuka has eaten shit in this show, and it's usually because they send her first.
Yeah, they don't. It's not usually her fault, right? Like,
right.
it's
not her fault. It's not like due to her like incompetence. It's like usually because like
They don't know what this angel does.
Like, send Asuka first, and it's like,
right.
And I mean, again, like, trying to communicate that to a 14-year-old child, like, no, you are needed, you are valued. Like, we use you as the vanguard. Like, we know that like you are tough and competent enough that like we can trust you to go toe to toe with an angel. To like feel out its abilities, but like from her perspective, it's like, y'all just keep throwing me to the meat grinder.
Right. I go out there, I get owned, and then Shinji has to come save me. That's what it looks like.
Right. That's what keeps happening, right? It happens with the fight against Unit 3. It happens against the fight against I don't know their names, so just Ribbon Arm Dude. Like,
right.
She is constantly made the vanguard, but like as a result also like ends up getting she never gets the glory. And like in any team, right, in any team setup, like that can be like, if you don't have the mindset to like find value in like that role as like the front man, as like the point man, like I could see how it would start to really like grind on your self-esteem that you never get the last hit.
She's so desperate for the validation. Like, nobody cares about Asuka. Like, other than maybe Shinji, like nobody.
Yeah, like
nobody really.
I mean, she says herself, she's strong and independent, and she take care of herself.
Right. Like, I mean, in many ways, it's like she cultivated. I mean, this is a tragedy of her own design. Like, you can see like the reason why, like in many ways, like, not really a point to bring it up here, but I really have come to appreciate Misato and Shinji's relationship in this show, because like it clearly comes from a place of like the closest thing resembling mutual understanding this show has. Like, Misato treats Shinji differently because she knows that Shinji needs to be treated differently. Like, it's not like it doesn't come from a place of like patronizing. It comes from a place of like, she's like, this is what Shinji's like, so this is why I need to talk to him like this. I need to say these things to him. I need to treat him like this. Right. It's like Asuka's like, I don't need that shit. Like, I'm number one. I'm the best. Don't fucking say shit to me. And like, can you blame Misato for being like, well, that's
no, it's
like,
it's clearly she's brought a lot of it on herself. I guess it's just, but she's also like that because of the things that we're going to get into that she's been through, and she's just a child. I mean,
totally,
this is the coping mechanism she's chosen, and you kind of almost can't blame her for not knowing what to do.
Right.
Something Hedgehog's dilemma.
Well, yes.
I mean, well, that's the thing, right? Like, that's kind of the core. I mean, the other core of Asuka's character, right, is like, what does Asuka want the most in the world, right? Like, for people to desperately pay attention to her, right? Like, to just look at her, to praise her, right? To like, to say good things about her, or not even like just to pay attention to her, right?
She just wants them to care. She wants people to care about her.
And so, like, how does Asuka, like, for better or worse, what is Asuka's primary form of affection for other people? Is paying attention to them, like not necessarily saying good things about them, but paying attention to them. And like, I think that is like how like you could tell that like, oh, the person she actually does care the most about here at NERV is like, I mean, other than Kaji, is Shinji, right? Because she pays attention to him. Like, in her like brain, like that's attention, which equals good. Like, it doesn't even have to be like
comprehend that her actions are pushing him away because she's coming on too
Right.
strong.
Right, because like in her mind, she's like, "What do you want? Like I'm giving you attention. Like I'm talking to you. Like that's
Right.
what affection is, right? Like,
Yeah.
like because it implies that she cares. Or like that attention means that the person cares.
Yeah.
And
Just a bunch of messed up kids.
oh, it's a mess. It's a mess.
So, I did want to mention in here, they did fit in the mention that they have begun mass producing the Evangelions up through 13.
Yeah.
So, despite everything that's been going on, they're upping their schedule, or perhaps because of the things that have been going on, they are upping the schedule to crank out some more Evangelions. And we cut to like the first time everybody's been home at the same time with Shinji, Misato, and Asuka sitting down for dinner. And man, compare this to the first half of the series. Much different mood at this point.
Yeah, it's like it's a thing of like they're all doing the things that they did when living together at the beginning of this series, but like the context has completely changed.
Yes.
Like Misato is still drinking, but it is like it is so like there's so much tension and just
she's no longer drinking because she likes it.
Yes, there's a implication she is
it,
drinking because that is all she has.
Yeah, I don't want to get too much into this right now, but when we talk about why we need the things that happened in the first half to happen,
for
making the second half mean things, this is the kind of scenes I'm talking about, where the only reason why this scene has impact and because it feels so tense and uncomfortable and kind of sad is because we had the happy fun times, by Evangelion standards anyway.
Totally, yeah.
Back in episode 8, 9, 10.
Yeah. I totally agree, Joe. I think that you're right. We should probably save this conversation for like once we
I don't want to get too much into it. I just want to throw that out for the specific scene.
I do agree. I'm glad you pointed that out. That like what makes this scene feel especially sad is that like this show did like because here's the thing, right? Like the show did not like those happy times at the beginning of the show were not done like ironically, right? Like they were done from a place of sincerity, and so like that makes the contrast that much stronger to the state of things now. And like I think that you're right, like it is proof that like this show had to do the things it does at the beginning to give impact to the things it is attempting to do now.
Right. That's where we've touched on it before and we'll touch on it again, just that you need all of Evangelion for Evangelion to work. But anyway,
she like quietly opens up to Shinji for a minute about phone call from her stepmother
after her extremely bad German phone call,
and then immediately is like, "Why am I telling you this? Fuck off!"
Right? It's like that's the thing. That's the tragedy of her character.
Yep.
Like if she could just open up, like like, but she can't. She just can't. She's like completely incapable of doing so. Like, we get this scene later where she's like in the bath. Or not even in the bath. She's staring at the bath.
She's too mad to get in the bath because she doesn't want to share the same bathwater with these.
Right. She's so angry at like just
everything.
She's just lashing out at the world. Right. It's just like and nobody knows what to do. Right. Like we see the scene of Misato overhearing it, and it's like, what can Misato even do? Also, is Misato even in the emotional state to try and help? Right? She's still
it's not like
dealing
not
with
like Misato's in great shape either, right? Yeah.
Right. It's like, how can anybody help anybody else at this point? When, like, I told Hiro this. I was like, wait a minute. If you told me, like, in episode 4 that, like, by episode 23 or 22, Shinji will be the most mentally stable Eva pilot, like, I'm like, you're a liar.
Yeah.
Like,
so the phone call with her mother, the Platinum Notes actually had the full translation of what she said, and it was like the most like boring.
How you doing? How's the weather?
But like specifically at some point she's like, well, I got nothing else to say, so I'm gonna hang up, and or she says, I don't have anything else to talk about either, so I'll talk to you later or whatever. And it's just like rubs in that, even her, it's not like she says to Shinji, like, I don't hate her. I mean, but she's
just our contractually obligated interaction
Right.
as
Right. Yeah. Wow. That's
as
good.
family.
Yeah. That's
so
yeah. That's a good touch then.
yeah.
I mean, even if the German was bad, like the
Right.
Yes, I thought that was interesting, but
yeah.
yeah. Anyway, so being as a piloting Evas are tied to your emotional state,
Right.
things are just not going well for
no, they
Asuka at work either.
yeah. Sync rates keep dropping. They say getting into like single digits.
Borderline.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
it's just like, yeah, she's just completely losing it. Her, you know,
Say
like,
something about how they might have to do swap out the core of Unit 2, rather.
Yeah, just like
right.
It's like a spiral, right? It's a spiral effect because like Asuka associates so much of her sense of self-worth with like her ability to pilot the Eva.
Yeah.
So like her sinking drop rates like has like it's an exponential effect, right? Like her sync rate drops, which affects her emotional state, which causes her sync rates to drop even more.
Right.
And, like it's just all bad.
And she's doing so poorly that we'll talk about the specifics of the elevator scene in a second here, but she gets in the elevator with Rei.
Elevator scene.
And even Rei is like, let
me tell you about how to pilot an Eva.
You open up your heart to Evangelion. That'll you have to open up your heart to pilot the Evangelion or whatever she says, and that totally just makes Asuka snap because now even Rei is
I mean, again, it's like it's a thing that like it completely falls in line with her character, right? Like because in many ways, Rei is the single worst possible person to give this advice.
Yeah,
like,
right. About you want to talk about opening up your heart. And you got this like emotionless doll, as she calls her, basically.
And so like the implication, because here's the thing, like, like I can see bits of myself and Asuka at this in this scene where like when you are like at your like emotionally lowest point, like
there are certain people you absolutely do not want to hear advice from.
Like, there are people like there
I
are
would
certain
fucking
people,
murder certain people.
Right, exactly. There are certain people in my life where if I were at my emotionally lowest point, were they to be the people to reach out and try to give me advice? Like, I mean, this is how some actual fist fights. This is how some actual fist fights in my life have happened because like the worst possible person like told me the things I needed to hear, like, but they came from the wrong mouth.
Right.
And it's just
Ray's not wrong. It just this was not the person.
No, like, but then again, but that's the thing, right? Like, who else could it have been? Like it can't be Misato. Like Shinji probably knows this, but like he doesn't know how to connect with Asuka because she pushes.
All right, guys, let's wheel Toji in here.
Yeah. Where's Toji, man? Like, I want Toji to show up again, walking in with like a cool robot leg or something, and being like, "I'm a well-adjusted teen, unlike the rest of you. Let me give you some advice."
But
like, fucking, as we find out later, Hikari is too much of a fucking punching bag to.
Yeah, we'll get to her next episode, but yeah, we do have to talk about the elevator scene itself, though.
All right, so let's
which there's another. I didn't time it in the platinum notes to give me the exact time, but it's a very uncomfortably long scene, and I think G, this is a better time to ask your question of whether this was intentional or not, because. So basically, the elevator goes on for like at least 30 seconds of absolutely nothing happening, and with like one little like Asuka shifts her shoulders or something, right, like in the middle.
Yeah.
But and just nothing happens. There's no talking, just the sound of the elevator, and no moving. It's obviously meant to be a very uncomfortable scene. I guess the question is, did they draw this out to buy themselves another 30 seconds, or could this have been 10 seconds and just as effective?
Right, like that's a thing. Yes, that is yes. This scene is better for this, but in general, yes, just like that's the question I asked, right? Like,
because this one I don't have an answer on this one. I don't know if I could see that going either way.
Right, so this is the scene we were talking about earlier, where when the equivalent of this shows up in the Rebuild movies. The uncomfortable silence is substantially shorter.
Right. And so like that's what I mean. Like is in that case, is the implication then that the rebuild version of that scene is that Anno's actual vision of what that scene would have been? And the version we have in the TV series is the version that they do because, like, it still communicates the same narrative point, but also buys them some extra time.
How many frames do you save with an extra 20 seconds?
It's 24 frames per second, so...
Well, I mean, anime tends to be
animated on twos, you're right.
on twos, so, like, 12 frames a second. So, like, you do the math, 30 times 12, like, you save a lot of manpower. Like, seconds don't sound like a lot of time, right? Like, wait, why would you cut corners just to save, like, 2 or 3 seconds? But, like, if that adds up into, like, a couple minutes over the course of an entire, like, episode...
If you only have, like, X thousand frames, cutting out a few hundred...
Yeah, it is a notable percentage.
Right.
I mean, the interesting part for me is the conflation of these two things, right? Is how did they take their limitations and, like, bend them to their advantage, you know?
Right. Because, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, a lesser studio would have broken under the pressure that Evangelion was created in, right? Like, we have all watched those shows that air sometimes in a given season that are, like, so, like, completely destroyed by their production issues, right? Like, you know,
what was that thing, handshakers or
right. Like, I'm not even right. Like I'm not even talking about, like, your Golden Kamui tier, like, bad productions or, like, cheap productions. We're talking
like
about
ones
the
that literally can't finish.
Like shows that literally can't even cross the finish line because like they're just, the studio does not have the capability to handle, like, the strain, which, you know, maybe says something about the labor conditions of animation, but it speaks to, like, the sheer talent of Gainax. Like, it is a weird thing to praise, but, like, just their ability to, like, take this in stride and, like, come up with ways to, like, get around the very real limitations that they're working under. And, like, as Iro said, like, how much of that is intentional and how much of that is, like, just making the best of, like, a very rough situation.
Right. And then in a roundabout way, you have to kind of be impressed with the solutions they do come up with, right? Like, that still, even if maybe it wasn't the best solution, the solution that came up with is pretty interesting or clever or, you know, whatever.
Totally.
And you kind of have to admire that to a certain degree as well. But yeah, this scene, I don't think we can answer that question. I could see it, like, in some ways, I think it's a very effective and interesting way of conveying the mood.
There's going to be a similar scene next podcast that we talk about, I think.
Oh yes, we'll talk. Yeah, let's save that for next. Yeah, we'll get there. we still got a lot of show left here, so
we still got to cover the show we got on our plate right now.
Yeah. Anyway,
Asuka tries to talk to her Eva, like, taking Rei's advice despite herself. Stands in front of her Eva and shouts at it, says, "Just listen, just obey my orders, you soulless tool."
Right. I mean, she's not really talking to the Ava. I mean, she's talking.
She's
to
doing
Ava,
it in her own way.
Right. I mean, she's talking to Ava in the way that, like, Gundam pilots talk to their Gundams, like, like the way a man might talk to his car.
Once again.
Yeah.
No, I did read that as she's so desperate that later on she's actually tried to take Rei's advice, and this is just her.
But, like, the problem is like because Asuka does not know how to open her heart.
Right.
She does not know how to have.
Like Ira said, this is her way of doing it. It's not right.
I still think it's hokey. I personally even think it's hokey. The idea, like, I know what the Ava units are now, and I still think this idea of having to open your heart up to the Ava is a hokey concept. Like,
yeah. Well,
like,
I mean,
you can't blame Asuka for, like.
Okay, what if you controlled them with big strings attached to your hands?
Well, then that's different, you know, because that's more along the lines of a mobile trace system. And all right, we got to keep moving.
Yeah, we got off.
As she's talking, the 15th angel appears.
Yes,
hallelujah, baby.
This big.
we'll get to that in a minute, but
some big fucking wings floating in space.
Yeah, another one of these fuckers.
It's just hanging out. We can't hit it. We don't have anything that shoots that far.
Yeah, this angel learned the lesson from the other angel, and it's like, oh, I'm just not going to come down to Earth.
We're going to work on our zoning game.
Yeah.
So it's another big orbital, because we had one out in space earlier too, but this one I think is even bigger.
Yes.
So Asuka, Asuka gets the orders to back up Unit Zero because Unit Zero's got the big gun, and she insists that no, she be let out first.
Right. So
how dare I spike back up?
Yeah.
I will go up front. I will land up on top and immediately take a hit.
Right.
Right on the nose.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. This is the second or third time in this show an Eva unit has immediately risen up from underground and then gotten hit by the Angels' attack the second they rise out.
Well, at this point, the Angels have figured out that psychological warfare is much more effective, right?
Yeah, they realize, these robots are being piloted by very hormonal teens. It is way easier to just fuck them up mentally than to actually
Asuka insists on jumping out, which I got the impression because I got the impression from Misato. Misato was like, "All right, let's just get this over with, right?
This is her last chance.
Let's let Asuka get this out of her system, and then either if she's done or whatever." But so Asuka insists on going out first. She goes out and gets hit with a Hallelujah beam.
This gives an entirely new context to the Mako parts in Kill la Kill. I have to be honest. It reframes them in an entirely new context for me.
Is Mako from Kill la Kill the 15th angel?
She does possess minor shape-shifting skills.
Yeah,
and,
she has
the ability to catch bullets with her bare hands. So
yeah,
Asuka's not having a good time. She just dumps all the bullets out of her gun into the floor.
Yeah.
We get some great UI stuff of here's the straight lines of how the psychograph's supposed to be. Here's this hellish squiggle on the other side of her current mental state.
It's some wild shit, and
that line's not even going left to right anymore.
I will say, both Unit 2 and Unit 0 had some very cool guns in this episode.
Yes.
That they proceed to fucking do jack shit with, but they're very cool looking guns. But yeah, so Asuka gets caught up by this beam, which turns out what it does is it's the traumatic flashback beam.
Yeah, it's reading it's forcibly reading her mind.
Right, and forcing her to also witness a rapid flashback.
It's reading her mind by making her remember everything. Right.
Yes.
Right. Before we dive into Asuka's brain here, they do sortie a Unit 0, and Rei has the big ass sniper rifle.
It's a cool looking sniper rifle.
Which
can't shoot far enough.
The Angel's out of effective range. So again, this basically we're not physical battles are pretty much over at this point. This is I think we're kind of establishing that
they beat our strongest monster, Ribbon Arms.
Yeah.
Right. Even Ribbon Arms couldn't beat them. Now we gotta rely on sneakier methods.
So there's nothing Unit 0 can do at this point, and we dive into Asuka's brain this time.
Yeah, and now it's her turn to get one of these inside the mind conversations with her Ava or whatever the fuck is going on here.
Shinji's got a couple. Rei kind of got one in the recap and is going to get one next episode. And
it's only fair that Asuka get her turn, and her go at it is deeply traumatizing, to say the least. This is some rough shit to watch. She is it's
I don't know if
she is just in clear and visual pain, if not physical pain, then emotional pain.
They kind of almost frame it as a sexual assault type of thing.
I mean, that's definitely the vibe, right? Especially with Asuka's line at the end where she says my mind has been defiled.
So in the original broadcast version, whenever they're flashing words, one of the words is sex, and in every subsequent version, they took that out.
Huh. That's a weird choice. I mean, that's a weird censorship choice, but that does.
Right. I think they're trying to. I'm not going to say equate, but they're trying to make it seem like this attack is.
I mean, it is it is a forceful probing from an external force,
having
right?
having a
it is,
similar psychological effect
yeah, like
on her.
it is an unwanted invasion into a place she considers like, like private and sacred in many ways, right? And
Right.
like this, because like unlike some of the other like fucking inside the mind conversations, this one is like, I mean, it's not even trying to have a conversation, right? It is just like ripping these memories out and like shoving them in her face, right? Like the barest glimpse we see of like some attempt at like reconciliation is like that brief scene where like, the child Asuka is attempting to like, whatever that child Asuka represents is attempting to connect with like real brain Asuka, I guess. And but
Right.
like even in the even in the throes of this deeply traumatizing event, Asuka is unable to let go of like who she is, right? Like
Right.
she can't help but push away.
Right.
There's this scene where her like some of her more famous lines repeated over and over in the voices of different characters.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she's like I guess it's like each time it's like Misato or Rei or Hikari.
Right. All the
It's like
female characters.
doing Asuka, and she's like,
Right.
no, that's not who I am.
Right. And it's like, I kind of love that scene because, like, I mean, yes, here's like here again, once again, another scene. Where it's like, did they just run out of money because like, they just do this? They do a loop of this recycled footage,
Right.
but again,
That
sorry,
specific loop was added in the director's cut. So
right. So I guess it was intentional, but because I was gonna say it is well done because like it is the thing of like, I think everybody here has had a time where like they said a thing. Or they had a catchphrase or a saying or like something that they consider like a personal phrase of theirs. That's like, oh, that's me. Like I say that thing, like bazinga, or whatever, right?
Oh god.
And it's like, it's a thing that you consider a part of yourself, but like hearing other people say your phrase and then hearing other people say it in a way that seems like either patronizing or outright mocking, like.
That's like a deep personal attack.
It is a deep personal attack. Like an attack that like I understand at the core of my being because me in high school totally had like
oh no, gee, don't.
Those I'm not gonna say them, I'm just saying had those kinds of phrases, Like and like it's the thing of like, oh, like if the me of now were to have those phrases thrown in my face by like people that like my friends and family, I think I would literally like Asuka, I would literally like shrink into a ball and then like pull a Shinji and try to melt into LCL. Like,
yeah,
like it is deeply humiliating. It is deeply traumatizing, and like I don't know, like it's the parts like this that actually really impressed me. When I'm not talking about like the God tier UI and the fantastic like art direction, it's stuff like this that like this bit of writing must come from somebody who must have experienced this in real life. Like somebody, one of the writers or Anno, maybe even Anno himself must have had in like one time in his life, like had somebody throw back a saying he used to say, like right back in his face in the most like humiliating way possible. And it must have just like completely destroyed him from the inside out.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it pretty much fills in whatever gaps our mind didn't fill in on Asuka's past and, kind of touching on we see kind of her real voice saying, no, like when she says, no, that's not really me. That's not really me. And at the end, by the end, she's just yelling, that she just wants people to care about her or whatever. Right.
To like her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And, but I think like you touched on G, she still doesn't let that destroy her, who we know her as at this point. Right. And,
yeah.
But yeah, before we get to the end, her snapping out of it, we had to deal with the angel. So Gendo says, right. Rei, get the lance.
That's right. Go down to that crazy giant.
Is this the coolest thing Rei ever does in the entire series?
I think so.
Is this the only thing Rei has ever done in the series? Well, okay, she did that one-arm tackle.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Which is pretty fucking badass.
That was pretty good, and this is so maybe that's number 2, and then
I do really like After she pulls the lance out and the Adam's legs regrow,
immediately
and
regrow back.
you just instantly know, like, we shouldn't do that. We probably shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, something bad just happened.
Because
right?
before
we have crossed a line.
Because before they're like, oh no, we don't want to waste the lance or whatever. And it's like, okay, but yeah, we're all going to die. Use the lance, but you don't fully understand. Oh. And even now they don't explain what happened, but you just know from that one visual cue, yeah, that was probably a bad idea.
Oh, this is really bad. Yeah, like, my guy, like, you know, the obvious implication is that lance was the only thing keeping
Right.
Adam, whatever, you know, like,
Right.
like
In check.
Shit is gonna pop off real bad from here on out. And what better way than to use the lance by fucking tossing it into space?
Right, the fucking javelin toss.
Yeah, it's a really cool scene. I mean,
I
like,
am always a sucker for the clouds part.
Oh yeah, no,
Yes.
this is a great bit here. Like, this is, you know, like, again, like, these are the parts where, like, Ava reminds you that at its core it is still a mecha anime. Like, this is a cool moment. Like, and you can tell because, like, all of a sudden the budget comes back. Like, Ava Unit Zero just like fucking like
saved it for.
Like fucking braces its feet. Like, you'd see its feet like fucking digging into the ground, like getting ready to just like toss this motherfucking thing into space. And, like, you know, it's a cool looking attack.
Drills right through the AT field.
Right.
Kills the hell out of the angel.
Yeah. And
flies into lunar orbit.
Yes, and so goes the weapon that I thought would have been more important than this, based on the amount of times it shows up in the promo artwork.
Well,
I thought perhaps the Lance of Longinus had more of a role to play in this show, but
what do you think would be like a mid-season upgrade for Unit 1?
I kind of thought that. You know, like I always wondered, like, you know, I've absorbed a lot of Ava through cultural osmosis, but how come I've never seen any of the Lance of Longinus fights on YouTube? And now I realize, oh, because like they fucking
threw it into space.
And I do like. We'll get into this in the next episode, but yeah, like, but again, I like that this once again still ties into like the desperation of NERV, right? Like,
no, like, we do not have the means to bring it back.
Right, like, well, yeah, I was gonna say that for the next episode, but sure, we'll just get into this now. Right. But like, you know, the fight itself, like, it's like, what do we do? Like, our guns don't work. Like Unit 2, like Unit 2's pilot is being literally traumatized to death as we speak. Like,
gun doesn't shoot far enough.
Like, we literally don't have anything else. Like, fucking get the lance.
Yeah, like using the lance is a bad idea, but you know what's a worse idea? Letting the angel kill us all. So like,
yeah, you know, it's
die now or die later.
Right.
Yeah.
So so yeah, as soon as the lance kills the angel, Asuka's freed from the attack, and so they recover Unit 2, and Unit 2 is physically fine. Asuka's
totally fine.
Technically physically fine, I guess, but mentally maybe not in great shape. And we get this I wrote "not now, Shinji" in because like the kind of the final bit we have is Shinji, you know,
trying to
say something and I forget exactly what he says, like, "Oh, I'm glad for you" or something, and he
basically says he's glad she's okay.
Yeah, and now's not the time for that, but
I mean, this is where again, I think Shinji made the right choice with Misato. I think he made the wrong choice with Asuka.
Yeah,
like,
right. Yes, that's what.
Like, this was not the time to.
So she kind of snaps at him. Like we said, she
hates everybody again.
Despite the attack, she does not let her guard down.
Yeah, she can't. In fact, her guard's gone up. Right. Like.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, she's become even more like prickly.
Yeah.
Like, as we see in episode 23.
Yeah.
Also, after this episode, at 22, we get like the super funky version of the ending.
Oh, right. Yes, the version of the ending in 22 is
wildly inappropriate time
which
to pull
makes
that one
it
out.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, because some of the other ones in this block, they just do like the orchestral versions, right?
Right. Yes.
Which seem more appropriate, maybe. But yeah, episode 23, Tears, or Rei III.
Rei 3, following Rei 1 and Rei 2 earlier in the show.
Which
yes.
yeah, And
Hiro had to remind me that there was an episode titled Rei I and Rei II.
yeah.
Like, I immediately just jumped to the clone conclusion and totally forgot that there were even episodes
Well, I
named
mean,
Rei
it's
earlier in this
probably
show.
both, right?
It's a double meaning,
meaning,
right? But I only grasped at the cloning thing. So
Yeah. No, there actually was like very early on Rei 1 and Rei 2 when we got
very
her
early on.
when we got her first episodes. But
Right.
yeah.
We open on Misato listening to Kaji's message,
Yes.
like deciphering his data.
Yeah.
We also see that she has switched to drinking lots of coffee.
Yeah, her room is a bit of a mess. More of a nightmare than usual. Except this time, it's not a nightmare in the comical way, it's a nightmare in the sad, obsessive way.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to point out, because I had to double check, Misato has a skateboard in her room.
Yes.
So, Misato...
Skateboard and just a cap. What?
Yes. Like, truly a child of the 90s and early 2000s.
Am I making this up, or did they show her skateboarding in the college years montage?
I don't know.
I think so, no. But I would
Maybe
play...
my brain made that up. But
Look, I would play Misato Kusaragi's pro skater, so...
Sure.
You know,
It didn't really get good until
on
Misato Katsuragi's Pro Skater 2, but
yeah, that's true. Yeah, but well, I think most critics tend to agree that Misato Kusaragi's.
I mean, some people like McCug. Some people like McCug, but
yeah, McCug. Misato Kusaragi's underground.
Oh
shit!
That was worth the tangent. Okay. So yeah, Misato still not doing great, but she is starting to piece together
she's starting to pull herself out.
That Kaji left behind.
Meanwhile, Asuka has just gone to Hikari's place to play Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine on the Sega Genesis.
Still kind of in pieces.
Wasn't it a Saturn?
It might have been a Saturn.
It was Saturn.
That controller. I mean, okay, I admit I've not seen a Saturn controller, but
yeah, it was a Saturn. I'm pretty sure.
It wasn't like a 32X or some shit.
No, I'm pretty sure because they showed the console at some point. I'm pretty sure it was a Saturn. That would make sense for mid '90s too.
Yeah, it's good to know that Sega somehow in this alternate universe survived and continued to make consoles in the Eva timeline.
Yeah. Maybe if they had made the Dreamcast in time, this whole thing could have been prevented. But
yeah, exactly. But
what if they got to Sanshiro over here?
Yeah,
the guy to Sanshiro would have stopped Second Impact.
But yeah, Asuka hasn't been home for who knows how long, and she's been
staying with Hikari.
Playing video games all day, not going to school, not really talking a whole lot.
Yeah,
Hikari's doing her best.
Yeah, this scene is interesting because, like, I think for me, it's like the vibe I always got is like, look, I'm sure Hikari sees Asuka as a friend, but like, I don't think Asuka's like that tier of friend, like the friend that's like, oh shit, you need a place to stay, come over to my place.
Right.
I think it's sort of like Hikari's just too nice to say no.
Right.
And like, you kind of get this bit where they're like sleeping in the bed together, and like, Asuka's like kind of, actually Asuka's opening up a fair amount to Hikari of all people, and like.
Which is like literally nobody else at this point, right? Like,
right, but like then the weirdness of the scene is like this isn't really Hikari's fault, but like Hikari basically admits that like she doesn't have the capability to give advice on this, and that she'll just like.
All right, Asuka.
Well, yeah, she's like, well, I'm sure you did your best or whatever, right?
Right.
Also, not the best thing to say to Asuka.
Right, but it's like Hikari just doesn't know anything else to say.
I mean, she's also a child, right? It's not like she's
right.
older.
She's also right. and you know what? Let's be real. She's probably also still dealing with the trauma of Toji's situation,
right?
So, like,
at this point, Toji made out like a fucking bandit.
Oh yeah, no, totally. If we want to say who won Evangelion, Toji. That Suzuhara kid, he made out like a fucking.
I mean, all he did was lose a leg. He did not get like psychologically traumatized.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, his sister got injured too, but
yeah, but she got transferred to the nerve hospital. She'll be fine.
I mean, the fact that that's the best you can possibly do to get out of Evangelion probably tells you how bad things are for everybody else.
Yeah, but I think it's just like it's interesting because like. it feels like Asuka's actually trying to desperately open herself up a bit, but like
Right.
it's just like Hikari is just like, again, not a fault against her, but she does
Not
not have
equipped.
like she's not equipped to like deal with this, like
yeah, Asuka needs some like professional help and not like another 14-year-old girl that is also
Right.
in a terrible situation. I mean, everybody's in it. Like, the world is ending. Like, we've talked about like the inevitability, the feeling of like inevitability, like the pending doom.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
you feel it even more than ever at this point, and like, yeah, just Hikari's not equipped to deal with the type
Right.
that.
I mean, I think we even get a scene where like maybe this is Kensuke's last spoken
That
scene.
was the last
like,
episode.
Right, it was the last episode where like Kensuke's at school and he's like,
Nobody's here."
Hikari?" He's like, "Yeah, nobody's here. Like, I guess school's not really a priority anymore with the way
Right.
things are going."
Yeah. So
Mhm.
yes, things are so bad that even Ritsuko's grandma's cat died.
Well, it's like
Yes.
isn't like Ritsuko's cat that she sent
Or
to be with her
yes,
grandmother.
so it's probably right.
Probably
Just
because
taking
I
care
can't imagine
of the cat.
Ritsuko having the time
The
or
culmination
capability.
of Ritsuko's various cat paraphernalia.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that's how bad things have gotten at this point. And we see.
Okay, can I go on a quick tangent about how much the Ava fan base overthinks certain things?
Yes,
Please do.
please.
I'd love to hear about this.
So this line has had a fan theory that the informant that Kaji met, who had a cat, is Ritsuko's grandmother,
Oh,
and that her learning this is learning that Kaji is dead in code.
that's a bit of a reach.
Yeah,
I
it really is.
Yeah.
You know what? It's
I mean,
a reach, but we can't prove that it's not true.
I mean, look, I can see how fans would come to that conclusion.
Yeah,
That's still a reach.
I mean, I would think Ritsuko would know that Kaji's dead or have figured it out by now.
Right. I mean, I think she would
second
have
only to like Fuyutsuki, right?
Yeah, like Ritsuko is like implied to be at least like the number 3 head honcho at NERV. So
if Misato could figure it out, then Ritsuko
yeah.
could have figured it out. But
anyway,
yeah,
Endo
anyways,
is talking to Stone Monolith Squad.
Yes. They're basically like, why did you toss the Lance of Longinus? We can't get it back. Like space recovery is impossible. Which the thing I wanted to bring up real quick is I feel like this is another great bit that kind of speaks to like the tone of desperation of Evangelion in the world they live in. That like
don't have the tech resources for a space program.
They literally don't even have the resources left to like send a ship up there to get it back. Which like based on the technology that's in that show, like if you have the technology to build Avas, you have the technology to build a space shuttle that can get that Lance back. Which then implies, oh, we can't get it back for like material reasons. Like we can't even put together a spaceship anymore. Like,
yeah,
that we gave that heat shield to Unit 0
Right,
during Operation Yashima.
Yep.
Last one.
Like it's it's stuff like that, or like the UN carrier group that was like escorting Unit 2. That's just this is all we have left,
right?
And like because like I think even us in 2019 with our current technology, if there was like a big old red lance floating in space near the moon, I think we could pull together the resources to get it if we truly committed to it.
Yeah, I think they did specifically say the size was a problem, and I think if in 2019 that would also probably be the problem you'd have to deal with. But you're right.
Yeah, but I think we could figure it out.
Figure that one out. But
look, the people at NASA are very smart.
Yes.
He gets just a call in the middle of being interrogated. He's like, Fuyutsuki, not now. Oh, it's an angel. I gotta go.
Angel. Yep.
Conveniently, the 16th angel appears.
Yeah. The old light snake angel.
Yes. Again, was this a budget cut angel, or because it's literally just a white line?
I do like how, because we're watching in HD, that anytime we get these bright white glowy effects, you can now see the imperfections where they cut the circles out of the cell, or like when Gendo's glasses go shiny as well. It's like you can see the little edges where it's paper and.
Hey man,
I
those
love that shit.
those are real things I love
Unironically,
about physical media.
yes.
Yeah.
But yes, thank you for pointing that out, Eero.
Yeah, so the 16th angel shows up. It's like a white line, glowing line of some kind, the ribbon thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Floating
They send
DNA
out
strands.
Rei because we don't got anyone else.
They launch Asuka as well.
yeah, so
They do, but
so they
I mean,
so they do attempt to launch Asuka, but she's so messed up at this point she can't even get the Ava to move.
right,
Yeah,
like it won't even activate.
So they just pull her right back down, which means they just got Rei to fight it.
Yep. Hey, she does her best.
She tries her
She
best.
grabs that thing and shoots it point blank with her gun.
Yeah, that was a cool scene.
Point blank no
That was a
scope
cool
it
scene.
with a sniper.
Fucking no scoping that thing with your Ava-sized Barrett, man. Like, we talk about like how Evangelion, is all about the psychological of blah 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 in these later episodes, but also these animators still know how to make things look fucking cool as shit sometimes.
Yeah, so she's shooting if you can just imagine the visual of shooting a ribbon with a giant gun is pretty ridiculous. While you're holding it down with your other hand.
Right. That's like it's a physicality of it. Like she's like holding it at bay with one hand while shoving the barrel. Like again, it's like what is literally just a white glowing line and just like dumping the clip in it.
Yeah,
but alas to no avail.
Yeah, as we've seen at this point, physical attacks are meaningless.
Yes.
And
physical attacks are useless.
And now it's time for some very unsubtle metaphor.
Yeah. This episode has a lot of not just metaphors, but I feel like there's almost like a horror element to this, like with a lot of the visual choices and everything. Which I'm sure was
Angel,
because the angel
starts wriggling.
Yeah, well, the angel starts corrupting Unit 0 and
as the UI says, penetrating.
Yes, by wriggling into it.
Yeah,
and which is causing weird, awful veins to show up in Rei as well.
Right in the Ava and Rei. And we once again get one more look into Rei's mind with another kind of montage thing that kind of highlighting, I guess, that Rei has become an individual person. Like she has her own. That's the way I was choosing to interpret it anyway. Like she has her own feelings, which will kind of fit in with the rest of the episode if you look at it that way. But but yeah, she can't. She's pretty much completely incapacitated to the point where Gendo's like, okay, restrictions lifted on Unit 1.
Which is like the final nail in Asuka's mental coffin. I feel like that.
Yeah.
Right. So once again, Asuka can't even
save Rei, but not for her.
Yeah.
Right. They didn't send in Unit 1 for her. Right. Yep. So, Unit 1 gets deployed, but before it can actually do anything, well, it gets
a stab in, and it
light snake for a bit.
Yeah.
First it goes for a gun in a truly classic maneuver.
Yes, it takes out the gun.
Right.
And the knife fights the light snake for a little bit.
Yeah. He does tangle with a little bit because we get the the horror thing. Like we get the weird
growth on his hand.
It's corrupting Shinji, and like you get the little rays popping out of his hand, and
it's like maybe one of the most iconic shots to me, at least in this show. Like
this is some gross shit.
Yep. Yeah. And Light Snake turns into Giant Naked Rei. Giant Naked Rei mini version.
So I guess at this point, Rei makes the decision that she's gonna absorb the angel and blow it up in some rather unsubtle imagery.
Yeah.
Where
if you've ever want to see a pregnant Ava,
this is her heart wanting to become one with Hikari, as she says. And then
so she sucks up the angel, and it's a very interesting visual choice. and then and like the body just like compacts back down, and then she blows up the Evangelion.
Yeah,
and it actually works. The angel's destroyed, and apparently so is Unit Zero. They do not.
Ritsuko brings in a squad to check it out, and they find the entry plug.
Right.
With
and
charred, like, the inside of that thing's not pretty.
Yeah. So, and Ritsuko's like, don't tell anybody about this. But they do mention that there's only one angel left after this, according to the Dead Sea Scrolls. So there's that to consider going into next episode. But even so, I mean, everybody's kind of in a bad mood because they're assuming Rei is dead. Even Pen is sad. We get the one the one shot of him laying around. Shinji's just laying around.
Not having a good time.
Yeah, everybody's in bad shape. Until
so
go ahead.
There's this scene where Misato goes to.
I was gonna say I assume we're gonna talk about that.
To like comfort Shinji, and like every version of analysis I've read about this says that Misato is like the only way she knows how to comfort him is by initiating a sexual encounter.
Yes,
and like I'm on the fence over whether that's a stretch or not.
I go ahead, G.
I am of two minds of that, because I wonder if they, because on one hand, there is the scene they show at the end of episode 20. Was it 20? Yes, 20. Where, as soon as Misato finds out that Shinji's alive, right, the first thing she does is to go have sex with Kaji, which I could see supporting this idea of like, oh, like this is how Misato understands like,
human
relationships and how to deal with like, a tough situation. I think that may be a slightly uncharitable view, because that implies that, oh, anybody who has sex is just like a mentally broken and only knows how to use sex as a way of like stress relief.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like the more charitable take would be, well, she is an adult woman. Like, that is probably just one of many ways she has open to her to like, relieve stress.
So,
sorry, go ahead, Jill.
Yeah, I want to throw this out there. So in the because we've been watching the Japanese, she like touches his hand and says something to the effect of, this is all I can offer you, or this is all I can do for you, or something like that. In the original English dub, they use the line something to the effect of "just know that I'm here for you," or something like that, which has less of a suggestive.
Right, that has less of a connotation, right? I mean, I guess this also depends on like your interpretation of like, well, like what does holding hands mean, right? In various cultures, like from our Western standpoint, like holding his hand could just as easily just be, well, that's just a standard, like that is a standard comforting like maneuver, right? Like that is what like parents do for children, like it's.
I mean, you could also interpret Shinji's reaction where he immediately pulls away and moves away.
And then that's all of a sudden where then maybe my like brain is going in the direction of like, maybe that's just what Shinji assumes Misato's trying to do, right? Like, I mean,
I'm not sure is the thing.
Yeah, I don't know if we can make a definitive answer on it. It's an interesting question.
The immediate follow-up is her thinking like, does he not like women? Is he afraid of intimacy? Right. Or maybe I'm the one who's lonely. And so it's
I think there's certainly an argument to be made that Misato might be doing that as much for herself as she is for Shinji.
These are.
I guess what I'm asking is, are we prepared to say it's like definitely a sexual thing or not?
I don't think you can rule it out.
Right.
But I don't know if you can definitively say yes or no. But
that's with many scenes in the show. There's some layer of ambiguity.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is a thing that is worth like talking about. But yes, I think that on some level there is enough of a degree of ambiguity to it that I think
Yeah.
It's hard to say explicitly, and I mean, as someone who's watching this for the first time, I don't know if later scenes, expound on it more or confirm, but at least the way I interpreted it is, the way I interpreted it is like, if one of the two parties tried to escalate it into sex, I don't think Misato would have necessarily have said, like, would have refused, is the way I put it,
Sure.
I guess. Is like, maybe that's not what she had originally intended to do, but if it went in that direction,
right,
she might have like gone along with it, I guess,
I think
is the vibe I get.
yeah, I think that all adds up for the circumstances and the characters and what we've and this really like desperate and hopeless situation that everybody's in, right? Like it fits that could be where that was headed, but I don't know if you can definitively say for sure one way or the other. Maybe it's something in between. I don't know. Maybe she just wanted some. Maybe it's just the desire, the comfort of physical contact. And not necessarily.
I mean, who knows? I mean, my other theory here is that maybe it had nothing to do with sex because she goes after Pen Pen next. So
maybe she
unless she's sexually
All
proposing
right.
to a penguin.
So.
And but we get the phone call that Rei is actually alive.
Hey,
she shows up in the
it's
exact
all
same
good.
bandages as episode 1.
Yeah, it's all good. Rei's fine. Hey, thank goodness.
Yeah, and I mean, I put in the notes Rei quote unquote survived.
Yes.
Because she goes to see her, and he's like, and
she has no memory of the battle.
He's like, "Thank you for saving me," and she's like, "Oh, I guess I saved you, huh?" And then she actually explicitly says at some point, like, "I guess I'm the third or something."
Right.
Yes, in case you somehow were not
Rei
able to put it together at any
III.
point.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
this is implied. This is
yeah, and I think that's
a whole new Rei.
I think that's why they were highlighting the individuality of Rei II earlier when we were looking into her mind a bit. Like, she has grown into her own person over the course of the series with her own. I mean, it's not a strong personality, but she has her own, feelings. Like.
Of course, this now leads to the question I have now is: we saw a child Rei in the flashback. Does the modern line of Rei clones just come out fully formed? Like, what happened to spoilers, yes, but like, what happened to the old line of the kid Rei clones? Like,
or did they have a tank of baby Reis that grew up in a tank? I don't know.
Oh boy,
it's not something I want to think about.
Oh boy.
But Rei quote unquote survived for now, but obviously it's just another Rei they pulled out.
It's a different Rei, right? I mean, I think the implication of this is. The implication I took from this is that the Rei that we knew, the Rei we
Rei II,
quote unquote grew to know and love, in many scare quotes here, is gone, right? Like, that Rei is no longer here. This new Rei is an entirely different entity.
But we also
that shares many of the same personality quirks, but like not the Rei that experienced the things that Rei II did.
Right.
But we get the classic clone morphogenetic field empathy stuff when she goes back to her room, takes off her bandages, and
it's all feels familiar.
Cries over the glasses, like, why am I crying?
Right. I mean, yes. I mean, this is the part, of course, of this show where it gets into fucking metaphysical bullshit of what is the soul and where does it go after we die? Does it go into the new Rei clone? Blah blah blah. That stuff. But
I think that's just like I think it's
I came away with the assumption that we were not supposed to necessarily treat this Rei as just the same old Rei, but she got better.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
I would say that is a correct assumption to make.
Yeah. So moving along, I guess Seele wanted to interrogate Rei, but rather than Rei, who I'm presuming Gendo wants to hide the fact that Rei died. That
Mhm.
he decides to send Ritsuko instead to be interrogated.
And she's naked for some reason.
Yeah. So
What
I
is
think
why?
the implication.
Like I was waiting for this whole episode for it to go somewhere. But
So I think because I was kind of curious and I was looking up some takes on that. I believe the implication is that she wasn't going to talk and they tortured her to make her talk. Tried to torture and humiliate her to make her talk. That was the most coherent explanation I've found on it. But yeah.
Wait, how would they? They're holograms. They can't.
I don't know, man. Whatever. She had to get there somehow.
I guess yeah. It's just that specific part. Like I'm not like saying oh naked is bad, but it's like it's such a weird like out of place.
Yeah,
like,
it was kind of jarring for no particular reason. I don't feel like it really added
like,
much to
like, I guess it plays into like Ritsuko's sense of like humiliation at the end of the episode, but like the reasoning for why she had to get naked in the first place, I couldn't really come up with like
right.
And
kind of the main takeaway from the scene is that Gendo was more than willing to sacrifice her to protect Rei. So
oh yeah,
that's
totally.
kind of what Ritsuko is taking away from it.
Yes.
Yep. So
we get another bit.
Misato gets the data, finds the chip in the capsule.
What if she didn't know to look in that capsule? Like, Kaji kind of places a lot of bets on her being smart enough to like open up a pill instead of just swallowing it like normal people do.
Yes.
Didn't he say that he left
multiple ways or whatever?
Like he left everything he had in with it. Like I seem to remember him saying that, some kind of explanation on it. But yeah, she's deciphering the chip and she now knows like everything Kaji knows about what NERV is up to. We don't, but
yeah,
at least they're not explaining it to us. But we know Misato knows now, and so she shows up at NERV to kind of hold Ritsuko at gunpoint here and make her show her.
Ritsuko brought Shinji along.
Yes, probably as insurance. Ritsuko.
Yes, Shinji gets a call right that
Ritsuko brings Shinji along, and the three of them go see what else NERV is hiding in the basement.
Yes, just a fun tour of the NERV basement.
Yeah, so they see Rei's real room, I guess.
Right, some kind of freaking like
lab
thing.
Yeah, just like some like fucking
torture
dirty
chamber,
like like underground lab.
And they see the bones of all the dead Evangelions that they tried to make.
Yes, buried in a fucking cross-shaped ditch because this show is just incapable of fucking doing anything subtly.
I appreciate all of the skulls are Unit Zero skulls. Like
yes, I did like that.
And finally, she reveals the tank of Reis they've been keeping in the basement, and the secrets,
the Rei fish tank,
the secrets of the dummy plug system. That the Evangelions are basically, in case we couldn't figure it out, the Evangelions are basically humans, but they don't have a soul, so they had to make souls to stick in them. That's what the Reis were. But these Reis don't have any souls anymore because we're out of souls, whatever that means. And out of spite or anger or whatever, Ritsuko decides to just melt them all.
Yep, hits the disintegrate Rei button, and they just die right then and there.
When I asked for a disintegration, Rei, this is what I meant.
I was gonna say there's a good creepy bit where Ritsuko dramatically turns on the lights and Shinji says Rei, and then all the Rei clones like fucking smile.
Yeah, this is the horror stuff I'm talking about.
That's some real. I would instantly run out of the room.
Oh yeah,
nope. I'm out of here.
Nope.
I've watched enough movies to know how this goes.
And Ritsuko finally breaks down too.
It was her turn to have her mental breakdown.
You know,
basically, kind of admitting that like she did everything. She did every like fucking awful thing for NERV that she's
For Gendo,
for Gendo, and that at the end of the day, she was used by Gendo just like her mother.
Fool just like her mother.
Yes. Which again, I'm not I'm not making light of the tragedy of her character, but Gendo's not even that good looking of a dude. I'm not sure where I'm getting this like vibe, like, oh man, Gendo's raw animal magnetism just draws women to him. I mean, even with Yui, right? Like Fuyutsuki literally said in that flashback episode, what the fuck do you see in Gendo? Like, he's a fucking piece of shit. And Yui's like, I don't think so.
And
it's
he's
like,
actually a very nice guy.
Yeah.
It's like, care to elaborate?
I mean, we were
Like-
kind of touching on this earlier because we don't know if Gendo is actually good at anything. Is he just a fantastic con man? I don't know, but
yeah, it's just like, I'm just like,
pickup artist
I mean,
Gendo Akari?
like,
I don't know.
Oh god.
like, there's a part of me that wants to believe, and maybe has to believe, that like, and again, not to like justify Gendo's actions, but to give Gendo something remotely sympathizable, is that he truly cared for Yui, and that like all of this is still like out of some like desperate obsession with her. But like, also, Gendo like just like fucking using these women and their affections is like some real fucking ratchet fucked up
Right.
shit. That is,
I think it makes Gendo interesting because I think to a certain degree both of those things can be true, where he's a terrible, like, just because you're a terrible person doesn't mean you're like incapable of caring for an individual or something, right? Or like people are more complex than just like being black and white good
of
people.
course,
That's
of
why
course.
it's
just
interesting that that you kind of get, because it is. I think it is implied or pretty much confirmed that he did care about Yui, and that this did kind of set him off on an even worse path than, because he was clearly not in a good path beforehand either. But but everybody says he changed after that, and that's when he switched over to this other instrumentality project and everything. But
right.
yeah, it's an interesting. You always like characters that are not just black and white, good evil. Although I'm pretty sure Gendo's a very, very dark shade of gray.
I mean, I think it's more. I mean, I was gonna say I think it's more black that happens to have a few drops of
maybe
white.
that is more
gray.
Maybe that is more accurate. Yes, but
like if you squint at it, you see it's gray, but on first glance, it looks pretty fucking black.
Yes, it's like charcoal or something.
Yeah, on that
fun way
note,
to end the episode.
Yeah.
I did want to point out that we have now gotten so bad that we are doing storyboards for previews.
Hell yes.
Yeah. This show's in a bad place, like tonally and emotionally and production wise, just all across.
Always a good sign when they can't actually show you anything from next week because it hasn't been made yet.
When they can't even show something to animate, like, my god, like,
yeah,
right.
Not even like a still image of a background.
Yeah, so
breaking out the storyboards and the keyframes.
We will pick up on that next time when we resume.
Yeah. We're gonna wrap up the television portion of the show next podcast.
Yes. So we're like super overtime. I know these shows are going to be. So but I don't want to. We came here to do a job, and we're going to do it right. I feel like that is the right thing to do here. So yeah, a little over. So I don't want to spend too much time at the end here. Just real quick, Jiggy, because I am interested. Did you actually enjoy these episodes?
So I know we're running late, but allow me to kind of like further elaborate on my feelings on this show. And you said a word earlier in this podcast that I think sums it up, and it's ambivalence. I was deeply fascinated by these episodes, actually. Like, I actually really do like these episodes for a lot of reasons. I think they're fascinating. They're very interesting. They're really interesting character studies, like, the Asuka episode, even this Ritsuko episode, like, I think these episodes were really interesting to kind of just like see how much of human nature was like intertwined with the creation of the Ava program and like the founding of NERV, right? Like the inherent tragedy of the Ava program and NERV isn't just the tragedy of Second Impact. It's the tragedy of like the human suffering that it 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 demanded of its primary participants, and like the ways that it drives those people to the very brink. I think it's like really interesting and super well done.
Yep.
I think the thing I'm beginning to realize though is like I'm incapable of like emotionally investing myself in any of these characters. Like I am interested in them in an academic sense. Like I like Asuka as a character. I think Ritsuko's stuff is interesting. But like even the Rei stuff is like, pretty interesting towards the end there, but like I guess it's like these things that are meant to be like these like very like undeniable tragedies of these characters. Like
There
I kind of
would it be fair to say nobody in the show is like 100% likable?
I think it's not even just that I need characters to be likable, but it's like like there are it's just like there are other shows where like the tragedy of the characters like does something to like my heart, does something to my emotions, like the inevitability of like I'm trying not to bring up Legend of the Galactic Heroes, but like there are certain characters in that show where the tragedy of their circumstances hurts me. It hurts me to watch them like be driven into like this status,
But
this like inevitability that they are driven towards. It hurts me to see it because I truly like I am emotionally invested in
those are characters you like though.
Whereas like
right? Like
yeah, well, yes and no. Like there are characters. I mean, I guess yes. I like.
And by like, I
I
mean like
you
are rooting for them to be. You want to see them do well. You're rooting for them as opposed to liking them as a character.
Oh, I don't know. No, I don't know. I ain't rooting for Ryan.
I'm trying to pick. I'm trying to feel out which
tragedy of his.
I'm trying to feel out which characters you're talking about. But yes.
Sure. I'm not going to get too deep into that because not the podcast for it. Right. But like, it's just like. I am compelled by Asuka and Rei and Misato and Shinji and Ritsuko and all of these characters, but I am not like I just can't find any emotional investment in them. Like when Asuka is going through this deeply traumatizing emotional hurt, like I almost feel a little voyeuristic where I'm watching and I'm like, this is really interesting television. Like this is very interesting character drama, but you're
not like connecting it as like a real
for her.
Because like I think with the best drama that gets you emotionally invested, there is some kind of connection to reality. I guess like it's simulating a real emotion, whereas maybe you don't feel that as much in this show, where it's more of a observational or like almost academic interest in it.
Yeah, like I think the character studies that they are doing in these episodes are undeniably well done. Like I would never take that away from the show. I think they are truly well done. I think they are well grounded in the personalities of these characters, right? They don't come out of nowhere. Like especially Asuka. I think Asuka is the closest I've become then to like maybe having some emotional investment in a character because like again, like I said, some of her shit is much too real for me to handle. But even then, it's like
I mean, that's kind of how I feel about the show as well. Just Shinji is the character I connect with more.
Right, but that's the like I totally I get you. But it's like even with Shinji, like I feel bad for Shinji. Like I can sympathize with Shinji, but like I can't bring myself to become emotionally invested in his character arc. I guess is it's a weird thing because like it's like watching a show. It's watching a show with like undeniably good writing, but like there's something about it that I can't bring myself to be connected to. But
right.
At the end of the day, I still recognize this is an unbelievably well-made show. Well, well-made show in the sense of like yes, and occasionally well-made. When they
save all their money up.
Yoshinari.
Yeah, saving up enough money to make the clouds spiral off into
Yes.
Iro, how are you feeling at this point on the rewatch?
I mean, I'm still enjoying it. Like, I don't know. I enjoy seeing payoff for foreshadowing and stuff. Like I was saying in a previous podcast, like considering how hard production is falling apart and stuff, like the consistency of writing and storytelling, like how tightly put together everything is, even when it's falling apart, is really,
I think,
enjoyable.
Yeah, I think to kind of touch on the big question we've been asking this whole episode, of what was intentional and what wasn't. I don't think any of the plot would have changed, and the fact that they've managed to salvage that, like, I think maybe we would have seen like more stuff filled into some of the scenes, but like,
because I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but they're getting into stuff that pays off in like end of Evangelion,
right,
which would not have been in production at this point in time. And so it'll be interesting to, I think, go into the infamous last couple of episodes.
Yeah, I think that's where we'll really be able to get into the meat of that after we watch 25 and 26. But yeah.
And 24.
Well, I'm specifically thinking of 25 and 26 as where the
I
we'll be doing 24 as well, but that's
yes.
Well, plenty of time to talk about that next time.
Yeah,
and yeah, I from my perspective, I mentioned that the Asuka episode was one of my favorites. The first time I watched the show, and kind of changed my mind about Asuka for the most part. But I do think. I think it's interesting watching it now. It seems maybe a little more obvious and heavy-handed than when I was a teenager, but I still think it was a very effective way of explaining her character. And
it's very heavy-handed. Like if we're being honest,
I mean, you can see the when like the whole doll thing with Rei and all that. Like it's very obvious, kind of stuff going on in there, but it's still very effective, I think, in accomplishing its purpose. And I'm really looking forward to again, I don't want to get too much into this now, but just when I was talking earlier about I love looking at how the first half impacts making the second half have meaning, that kind of stuff.
Totally. I think that is definitely a conversation that we should definitely have in a different podcast. Or I just
want to mention that one more time as another thing that really stood out to me watching it again, which I've always known, but just thinking about it, I think that specifically more this time, and noticing it more this time. So, all right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
let's get out of here.
I know G and I are sitting with no air. I think Iro, you don't have air conditioning on either right now, right? So we have made the sacrifice for you people. I hope you enjoyed this extra long episode. I've probably lost 2 pounds sweating. Do our housekeeping real quick. Check us out.
Let's do all other podcasts.
Let's just get this over with. Go look at theglorioblog.com. Do check out. We have all our first looks of the summer season up, which are just about done now. So check those out, and we'll be talking about those on the next podcast. Probably a couple days after this goes out. So keep an eye out for that. Check out all our other podcasts on all our various podcast places: iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, and that's about it. So, we'll catch everybody. We're going to we'll catch everybody next time for wrapping up the TV series. And, well, I guess I've got to do this one more time, huh? Next time on Neon Genesis EvanGLORIO, we'll talk about episode 24, The Beginning and the End, or Knocking on Heaven's Door. Episode 25, The Ending World, or Do You Love Me? And episode 26, The Beast That Shouted, I at the Heart of the World, or Take Care of Yourself. I guess one more time we'll do fan service. See you next time.